Chapter 789. Dark Queen's interference. Saber's blood sword and Belinur's golden spear clashed, creating otherworldly noises. Instead of using spells, they used their weapons to fight. However, they occasionally cast spells to gain an advantage. Yet, their battle remained at a stalemate. The battle between them continued for almost a day. When the sun rose in the horizon, Belinur's aggressiveness increased by several folds. Belinur's armor absorbed the sunlight to enhance his speed. Since Saber had no armor, he began to take blows from Belinur. The war god swung and stabbed left and right. The spear cut Saber a couple of times. His silver robes began to drench in blood. Not that Saber was slow, but Belinur was faster. Belinur's armor glowed brighter and brighter in the light. Blood trickled down from Saber's mouth. The war god hit him with the spear in the face. It contained enough force to turn a core-strengthening stage warrior's neck to the other side. Saber's face went numb. Belinur pushed his advantage by hitting him several times, faster than before. Belinur quickly moved to the point he showed his back to the rising sun. As a result, Saber faced the sun. The bright sunlight messed with Saber's eyesight. He couldn't see the golden spear in the golden light. Seeing Saber squinting his eyes, Belinur snickered. As a war god, he was born and raised on a battlefield. He knew how to use everything around him to his advantage. While he was battling Saber, he learned Saber's strength. He knew Saber was not weaker than him. Thus, he fought till the sun rose to increase his power. His weight was worth it as he started to hit Saber more and more. But to Belinur's surprise, cuts and bruises on Saber's body healed instantly. Belinur had an eerie doubt about Saber from the moment he met him. "You're a vampire," Belinur said. He didn't stop attacking Saber. On the contrary, he turned more ruthless and aggressive. Saber slowly started to lose the battle. Luckily, Saber's reflex and battle experience enabled him to evade deadly blows. Belinur kept aiming for Saber's heart and throat after realizing he was a vampire. "So Ghost sent you here?" Belinur asked as Saber flew backward to put some distance between the two of them. When Saber heard Belinur address the Dark Lord by his name, Saber's blood boiled. He gritted his teeth, swinging his blood sword. "Do not speak his name," Saber snarled. "Why?" Belinur deflected the blood sword with his spear and asked. Belinur had no sign of fear in his eyes. Compared to the rest of the continents, Ar had seen only a little of what the Dark Lord could do. Therefore, people like the war gods feared the Dark Lord less. Some of them outright challenged the Dark Lord for a duel in several parts of Elven kingdoms. Of course, the Dark Lord ignored these silly challenges because he had more important things to deal with. Besides, the Skyhall and Guardian would have an easier time if he answered all these challenges from nobodies. "Because you will die," Saber growled. He saw a glimpse of the Dark Queen on the horizon. He could swear he saw her. Belinur didn't even flinch hearing Saber's threat. Little did he know that it was not a threat but a warning. The runes in Belinur's armor radiated bright light. He glowed under the sunlight. Saber received more blows as seconds passed, and his face became pale. Every part in his body ached. The armor of Belinur made him stronger than Saber initially expected. Spare's mind and body told him to use the teleportation scroll to escape. Backing off and living to fight another day was way better than dying. However, he couldn't afford to escape without the Dark Lord's armor piece. That was the only reason why Saber was still fighting Belinur. If he managed to escape with the armor piece somehow, Saber planned to ask the Dark Lord for armor. He learned the importance of powerful armor the hard way. Now that Michael had reached the 5-star blacksmith level, he could forge powerful armor. But to forge armor like Belinur's, he needed to be a 6-star blacksmith. Michael didn't plan to stay at a 5-star level for a long time as he did with the alchemy specialization. Instead, Michael decided to get everything the system required to reach the 6-star level as soon as he left the heavenly tribulation. Unlike Saber, Michael knew how powerful armor could change the tide of a battle. He also knew his army needed armor more than him. All the Great 8 clans possessed powerful armor and weapons, making them almost invincible. When he was done fitting his army with weapons and armor forged by him, the hierarchy of the power structure in this world would change forever. Eventually, Saber's body refused to listen to him as his muscles went rigid. His movements slowed down, leaving him vulnerable to a deadly killing blow. The war god raised his spear to end this battle once and for all. As much as he hated vampires, he respected Saber as an opponent. He was taught that a warrior must never fear an enemy but always respect them. When he was about to stab Saber's heart with his golden spear, a dark trail appeared in the air. The trail of blackness hit Bellinor in the chest before he could stab Saber. Bellinor coughed up blood. It took him a second for his brain to process everything. His chest ached as he looked down to see a dark arrow sticking out of his chest. He tried to turn around, but another arrow hit Bellinor in the gut. Using this opportunity, Saber mustered all his strength and pulled out the space ring from Bellinor's hand. Green veins bulged up under Bellinor's skin. Bellinor's vision blurred. Before he could retaliate, Saber tore the teleportation scroll in half. A bright light enveloped Saber. To Saber's surprise, Bellinor stabbed the light as he saw a splash of blood in the light. Bellinor quickly turned around despite the poison in his body to see who shot him with poison arrows. When he turned around, he saw no one in the vicinity. He immediately accessed his space ring to get a healing potion. The poison was powerful enough to harm a fusion stage cultivator himself. But he was surprised when his vision cleared. He felt better as his breathing became normal. The green veins on his skin slowly faded away. The poison cured itself without taking an antidote. Bellinor realized that whoever shot the arrows had no intention of killing him. Even when he was fighting Saber, he sensed Saber was holding back. He didn't go for killing blows. It became clear to him that Saber wanted to steal his space ring that contained the armor piece. "I should have been more careful," Bellinor said to himself. It was too late for him to realize that the armor piece might have belonged to the Dark Lord. At least he had taken an interest in the armor. He knew he must inform the Empress. Attacking a war god was equal to attacking Gondolin itself. Hence, the Dark Lord had waged a war against Gondolin. Inside the Gondolin castle, an elven lady with striking golden hair flew around her perfectly sculpted face. Sparkling aquamarine eyes sat gracefully within their sockets, watching delightfully over the haven they'd sought solace in for so long. She radiated power and grace. Anyone would be tempted to bow and kneel down before her. She was none other than Nithrol Grimfield, the Empress of Ar. Something was appealing about her. Perhaps it was her personality, or perhaps it was simply her goodwill. But nonetheless, people tend to respect her. She stood atop the balcony outside her room and watched the city of Mvarian. Her mind was filled with new requests from the people. Recently, the dwarves had begun to build new types of contraptions, which made them worry about the kingdom's security. The dwarves had been keeping their hatred toward the elves suppressed. She worried they might side with the Dark Lord to seek revenge against them. Thousands of years ago, elves and dwarves ruled over the kingdom. Then, the dwarves cultivated almost as fast as the elves. These two races were always on the verge of the fighting because of their hatred toward each other. With their superior contraptions, the dwarves finally attacked Gondolin. They would have won the war if it wasn't for her. The dwarves knew she was powerful but never expected to be powerful enough to wipe out their strongest armies within a few minutes. Because of what the dwarves did, she summoned all the best rune masters, healers, and alchemists to suppress the dwarves' cultivation. The dwarves slowly declined as the elves became the lone sovereign of Ar. Even to this date, the dwarves held fire in their hearts that longed to burn the elven empire to the ground. As Nithrol was thinking about the dwarves, she saw Bellinor flying toward her in the sky. Even from miles away, Nithrol could see the frowns on the elves' faces behind Bellinor. She patiently waited for Bellinor to come to her. A while later, Bellinor was granted permission to land on her balcony. The moment his feet touched the ground, Bellinor dropped to his knees. "Your Imperial Majesty," Bellinor lowered his head. "Rise, Bellinor. Your eyes contain anger and concern. Tell me, what happened in the auction?" Her voice sounded gentle, like a melody. Bellinor took a deep breath before telling everything that had transpired. She remained as calm as still water. When he finished his story, she just smiled. "So the time to meet him has arrived," said Nithrol. Do you think the vampire who attacked you could have killed your underlings? Asked Nithrol. She had no signs of anger in her eyes. Instead, she seemed amused. Yes, your Imperial Majesty, Bellinor nodded without a doubt. He watched how the vampire had taken out the elves. Thus, he knew the vampire could have killed the elves if he wished to. Something prevented him from killing them. Even when he was fighting him, the vampire held back. I wish to meet the Dark Lord. Bellinor was startled by her words. Before he could raise his concern, she simply raised her hand. You are coming with me and only you. This is my order, not a request. Chapter 790, End of Heavenly Tribulation. A few days later, everyone in the dark ocean surrounded the floating mountain. The entire mountain field was littered with lightning bolts. The lightning bolts targeted the top of the waterfall. Thousands of lightning streaks were in the sky. It was a beautiful yet terrifying sight. The lightning made the night look like a day with its continuous bright flashes. Other than the visible changes, the energy around the mountain violently fluctuated. Everyone in the area felt difficult to breathe. They felt weak for some reason. On top of the Sword Hilt Mountain, a cloud of darkness surrounded Michael. Runes and arrays around him lit like Christmas decorations. He sat in a meditative position with his eyes closed. Gaia and Adelia stood a few meters away from Michael in case someone tried to attack him. Fortunately, they faced no enemies for the last 9 days. The rogue cultivators didn't even dare to watch the heavenly tribulations. The last time Michael had his heavenly tribulations, countless cultivators came from all over the world to watch him. But now, the floating mountain had only the Dark Army. At that moment, the Dark Ocean became one of the most protected places in the world. Gaia looked around, the lightning storm getting worse by the second. The howling wind warned them about the upcoming storm. Gaia knew if he hadn't revealed himself as the Dark Lord, someone might have tried to interrupt the tribulations. Now, no one had the guts to do so. What happened to Ithelin was a perfect example to show them what would be the result of messing with the Dark Lord. The Dark Army was ordered to patrol the mountain vigilantly. They patrolled every corner of the mountain. In addition to the army, all of Michael's subordinates except Sadie had arrived at the castle. They didn't come outside to show their faces but remained in the castle. Gaia ordered them to come outside only if powerful armies attacked them. As they were watching the tribulation, the sky directly above Michael darkened. Granted that the storm clouds were already dark, but they became pitch black. Gaia could barely see Michael through the dark cloud of smoke around him. This darkness was not midnight dark. Instead, the darkness around him seemed otherworldly. The darkness made everyone weaker. Suddenly, a dark lightning bolt struck Michael from above. Gaia's heart skipped in shock. But she remained still instead of rushing forward. She had total trust in Michael. Nightmare and Vidora looked slightly worried. Another lightning bolt struck him, and countless bolts rained down upon him. The ground around him was lit with dark flames. Gaia could feel the scorching heat from the darkness. Soon, seconds became minutes, and minutes turned hours. Gaia noticed Michael's power slowly and steadily growing. The energy fluctuations around him skyrocketed. Congratulations to host for reaching the Immortal Stage Level 1. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 2. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 3. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 4. He's reaching the Immortal Stage, said Adelia. This was the first time Gaia had seen a cultivator reaching the Immortal Stage. She and the army stared at Michael in shock. He reached the Immortal Stage Level 2 in a few minutes after reaching Level 1. He didn't stop at Level 2 but reached Level 3 and 4 in a few minutes. Finally, it stopped at Level 4. Gaia and Adelia thought no one outside was watching the mountain. But they were dead wrong. At that time, 2 outsiders stayed far away, watching everything that had been happening in the Dark Ocean. These 2 were none other than Ethan and Diana. He is getting stronger faster and faster, said Ethan. His voice contained a cocktail of emotions. He was proud, worried, shocked, and terrified. The stronger he becomes, the bigger the target on his back, said Diana. Ethan slowly wiped off the blood from her face. The reason Michael had a peaceful tribulation was because of Diana. Some of the Great Eight clans had sent assassins to interrupt the tribulations to kill the Dark Lord. However, they were all slaughtered by Diana before they could reach the Dark Ocean. Even the patrolling Dark Army had no idea a slaughter had taken place around the mountain. "What do we do?" asked Ethan. Naturally, he was worried about his son. It had been more than a year since he saw him. Before he went full Dark Lord mode, Ethan was able to see and talk to him due to alchemy deals. Now they completely lost connection with him. "We can't do anything," Diana sighed. She was at the fusion stage. Soon, her son's enemies would be stronger than her. At that, no matter how fast she could cultivate, she wouldn't be able to defeat them. Moreover, soon she would trigger her heavenly tribulation. She couldn't even imagine what Skyhall would do when they realized she had broken the seal put on her soul. If she wanted, she could have reached the half-immortal stage a month ago. Instead, she was waiting for the right time and right place. Her heavenly tribulations could destroy her entire family. She was even planning on asking the Dark Lord's help. If someone could help her, it might be her son. She didn't want to add more trouble to Noah's plate than he already had. On the other hand, Rowena had been staying in her palace for the last year. They were about to meet Rowena almost after a year at Andrew's and Catherine's baby shower. Diana and Ethan wished to spend the day as a family, but there was no way to invite Ghost. Diana yearned for a family reunion they deserved, although she knew the odds of that happening was near impossible. "I still think we should tell them everything," said Ethan as Diana shook her head. "If we did, they would go to war with the Skyhall itself. Our kids are strong but not strong enough to face the Great Eight clans or the Skyhall." "I lost count of how many times I told you this," Diana smiled tiredly. To be honest, Diana couldn't find a way to get her family out of this mess. But telling her children about Ghost and the Skyhall was out of the question. She knew about Rowena, Noah, and Sabrina. Rowena would break the palace and wage war against the Skyhall the moment she learned the truth about her little brother. On the other hand, Noah would be broken to the core since he believed in the Guardian Guild and Andreas. The truth would break everything he believed in. As for Ghost, Diana had no idea what he would do when he learned the truth. One day, she just wanted him to forgive her. She would gladly give her life for him to do that. Meanwhile, the lightning bolts continued to strike Ghost, tempering his physical body. Eventually, the lightning storm stopped as the storm slowly lost its force. The dark clouds faded away, leaving a little bit of light to peek through. Michael slowly opened his eyes. They glimmered with vigor and newfound powers. He looked around the endless ocean surrounding the floating mountain. He moved his head left and right. His neck cracked as he stood up. When he clenched his fist, dark golden lightning bolts crackled around his fist. Soon they turned black. These black lightning bolts were several times more powerful than the golden bolts. He felt many changes in his body. But this was neither the right place nor the time. He smiled at Gaia before disappearing from her sight. He left an afterimage that lasted a second before fading away. Surprisingly, he didn't teleport but cast the lightning dash. His speed reached the point it looked like he had teleported away. Michael reached his room in a few blinks of an eye. He felt dizzy as his mind and body were still adjusting to his new speed level. He jumped straight onto his bed and opened his status window. Host, Michael Cultivation Level, Immortal Level 4 Experience Points, 0/8, 000, 000 Badass Points, 1, 600, 000 Skills and Spells. Wind Blast LVL 6 Ultimate Form Level 1 Eyes of Doom, LVL 5 Ultimate Form Level 1 Responsive Shield, LVL 8 Environment Scanning, LVL 8 Ignitia, LVL 8 Ultimate Form Level 1 Silenes, LVL 1 Lightning Dash, LVL 6 Ultimate Form Level 1 Energy Devour, LVL 5 Soul Eater, LVL 5 Death Range, LVL 3 Eyes of Darkness, Normal. Can sense the cultivation level of others' Eyes of Darkness. Lucifer. Can sense the cultivation level of others. Can see through illusions cloud of darkness. Lucifer. Weak-willed enemies will lose their courage completely and surrender. Death range will be 50% more powerful, and if activated in darkness, the host's cultivation level will be boosted 4 levels up regardless of the stage barrier. Wordless spellcaster, Lucifer. In full Lucifer form, the host just has to think of the spell to cast it. Techniques: Swords of Destiny, 98% Mastery, Ring of Fire, 96% Mastery, Serpent Maga, 98% Mastery, Occupation. Core Disciple of Sunrise Sect, the Guardian of Sunrise Sect, Lord Lucifer of the Abyssal, the Dark Lord, King of Bradford. Status: Healthy goals: Control the world, grow the Order of Death. Utility function: Banker, LVL 5, ratio, 1000 gold coins. 40 badass points, Runic Teleportation, X-ray vision, also integrated with Eyes of Darkness, wealth, 15 million gold. Special trait: 6-star Alchemist, 5-star. Blacksmith, 5-star. Inventor. Subordinates: Gaia, Warrior, loyalty level 100%. Raylene, 5-star. Chef, loyalty level 99%. Arya, Assassin, loyalty level 86%. Dead Heinberg, Warrior, loyalty level 45%. Maxine, Warrior, loyalty level 98%. Tiberius, Warrior, loyalty level 85%. Sadie, loyalty level 70%. Ricky, loyalty level 95%. Titus, loyalty level 80%. Optimus, loyalty level 80%. The Silent Reaper crew, Pirates, loyalty level 93%. Base of operation: the Abyssal, the Crypt Kingdom of Bradford. Familiars: Nightmare. Royal Dragon, Vidora, 3-headed Hydra. Elemental manipulation: Wind, 40% mastery. Fire, 40% mastery. Lightning, 50% mastery. Darkness, 45%. Finally, Michael had reached the immortal stage. When he came to this world, he aimed to reach immortality. After 2 years, he achieved his dream. But he wasn't as surprised as he expected it to be. He knew his enemies were stronger than himself. Luckily, he had his own army. Nonetheless, his status window put a smile on his face. Now that he had reached immortality and had enough points, he planned to upgrade his spells and buy a few blueprints to utilize his blacksmith specialization. It was time to forge weapons suitable for the Dark Lord. Chapter 791. Dark Lord meets the Dark Lord. The loyalty of each subordinate remained almost the same since he had last seen. What shocked him more was the experience cap to reach the next level. To reach the next level, he needed a humongous 8 million points. His elemental manipulation increased by 10% except for darkness, which increased by 5%. Before Michael upgraded the spells, he decided to buy a few blueprints for new weapons. He mainly bought these weapons to fit the Big Bertha. Michael accessed the store without a second thought and bought the blueprint to build a torpedo launcher. The host has successfully bought the blueprint for torpedo, said the system. He bought the torpedo for a whopping 600,000 badass points. The torpedo launcher was worth the price. It could launch 5 torpedoes at the same time. Michael could power it with the Arch Energy crystals. According to the system, 2 torpedoes could destroy a frigate, and 4 could destroy a man-o warship. For some reason, he had a gut feeling that he would need to power up his naval army soon. Considering his gut feeling had never betrayed him, he went with it. He wanted to use the remaining points on a new weapon. Now that he had become the 5-star blacksmith, he only needed a blueprint from the system. He would be able to forge the weapon by himself. He rummaged through the blueprints to pick the best weapon. He mainly looked for a sword because of his mastery over swordsmanship. Some swords had a special affinity to elements such as fire. In other words, these swords could conjure flames. Most of these swords had no chance against the dark flames. Hence, a pair of swords called the Dark Swords caught Michael's eyes. Just their name alone was enough for Michael to buy them. In addition, these pairs of swords could withstand the dark flames. The only downside for this pair of swords was the things needed to forge them, especially the ore. According to the system, the ore could only be found in the demon's grave. It was the most dangerous realm in the entire world. The demon's grave would make the treacherous ocean look like a children's playground. He needed 5 materials to forge the swords. Luckily, 3 of them were in the demon's grave, and the other 2 had to be bought from the system, which made forging the swords without a system an impossible task. Michael bought the blueprint for the swords cost him 800,000 badass points. These 2 purchases exceeded Michael's expectations. After buying these two, he only had 200,000 badass points in the system. Instead of spending them, Michael decided to save them for another day. He exited the system with the decision to visit the demon's grave soon. As he exited the system, he saw Gaia walking into the room. To his surprise, she seemed serious. She didn't even hug him. "You need to see something," said Gaia. The smile on Michael's face disappeared. He quickly got off the bed and followed Gaia to an empty room in the castle. Gaia didn't speak a word till they reached the room. When they reached the room, the door opened with a slow creak. Michael saw Adelia, and Azazel was waiting for him inside the room with a dark box atop a pillar. "My lord," Adelia and Azazel bowed toward Michael. "Is the armor piece inside?" Michael asked as Adelia nodded. Judging by the looks on their faces, Michael knew something was amiss. Hence, he scanned the box for any booby traps. The system took a few seconds to confirm there were no traps inside but a hologram. As soon as Michael touched the box, it clicked. Soon, the box slowly opened, revealing the armor piece inside. But before Michael could touch the armor piece, a hologram of himself appeared above the chest. Michael took a step back. Just the hologram was enough to make Adelia and Azazel drop to their knees. The holographic Dark Lord's gaze swept across the hall. Michael felt a warmth through his body as though the Dark Lord was scanning him. Since it was not a soul piece but a hologram, Michael knew the past Dark Lord must have used the system to use technology from the Earth. After the warmth faded, the Dark Lord locked his gaze with Michael. "Congratulations. You are doing better than I was expecting," said the Dark Lord. "Finding these armor pieces must be your priority." The Dark Lord paused, sighing heavily. "You must have lots of questions. For now, I can only confirm your suspicions. Yes, I went back in time and became you. Time traveling is not as simple as they showed us where we came from." The Dark Lord smiled a little. Even though it was just a hologram recording of himself, Michael noticed an immense sadness in his eyes. He seemed tired, void of any happiness. Seeing him, Michael immediately thought of Gaia. Did something happen to her? Michael questioned himself. "I cannot explicitly explain to you why I traveled back in time or what mistakes I made. Instead, I was only able to leave you something behind to help you on your path. However," the Dark Lord stopped for a moment before continuing, "I must tell you one thing: you will fight Noah, but do not rush into the battle. Noah is not the only enemy you have to fight. Not all people fear and worship gods. Some want to get rid of them." The Dark Lord's voice became stern and serious. "They would go to any lengths to do that. So you must protect your own and get stronger," said the Dark Lord. "And take care of my Gaia." A miserable smile appeared on his face. Gaia's eyes watered just by seeing him sad. Despite everything, he was still the man she fell in love with. Hence, seeing him hurt and sad made her eyes tear up. "No matter what happens, do not fail to protect her. I reset the entire universe so you can get the happy ending that I didn't," he sighed. To Michael's surprise, the Dark Lord turned his gaze toward Gaia. Michael wondered how the hell did he locate Gaia correctly in the hall. "I would give anything to see you smile one more time." For the first time, Gaia heard the Dark Lord's voice stutter. He was the emotionally strongest one of the two of them. Yet he seemed so vulnerable at that moment. "I love you, my dear Wifu." Finally, the Dark Lord smiled. Soon, the hologram started to flicker. "Do not rush into the battle with Noah." Before the hologram faded away, Michael heard the Dark Lord's warning about Noah one more time. After the hologram disappeared, Michael remained still, without uttering a word for a few minutes. Silence fell over them. A few minutes later, Michael took out the armor piece from the chest. It disappeared into Michael's system storage. 2 more pieces, and he would have his armor once again. "What happened in this room stays in this room. Got it?" Michael asked them, looking over his shoulder. "Yes, my lord." Azazel and Adelia nodded. After hearing the Dark Lord's final words, Adelia was worried about her daughter. It took her almost 3 decades to reunite with Gaia, and Adelia didn't plan to lose her again. But no matter how worried she was, she did not question the Dark Lord's ability and love to protect her. If someone could protect Gaia, it was him. Michael then turned around. With a flick of his wrist, he took out 2 silver parchments from the system storage. He threw them at Adelia. "Take Saber with you and find me the remaining armor pieces," Michael ordered. Adelia nodded before leaving the room with Azazel. "Michael," Gaia came to his side and put her hand on his shoulder. "Are you worried?" she asked. "No," Michael shook his head. He turned around to look her in the eyes. With a gentle smile, he cupped her face. "I am not my past," Michael gently massaged her face. "We will get a happy ending. I promise you that," said Michael. "I know you will," she smiled. The two of them shared a moment of intimacy and left the room. They headed for the outside. Just as they stepped outside to greet the Dark Army, he saw Gibson running toward him. He was drenched in sweat. "My lord Tsumai." He couldn't speak through his heavy breathing. "Take a deep breath and relax," said Michael. Gibson took a deep breath as he was told. "My lord," Gibson put his hand inside his robes to retrieve a golden parchment. It came from the Empress. Michael was surprised by Gibson's words. He opened up the parchment to read what the Empress had to say. "That's surprising," said Michael after reading the parchment. "What is it?" Gaia asked. She couldn't hold her curiosity anymore. "The Empress wants to meet me." Just like Michael, Gaia was surprised by the sudden invitation too. "Might be a trap," said Gaia. "I don't think so. She wants us to pick the place and the time. She is only bringing a war god named Bellinor." "Bellinor, huh?" Gaia remembered the name. She didn't know him when she put 2 arrows into him, but when she asked Sadie about the war god who attended the Aqua Palace auction, Sadie found his identity. "You know him?" asked Michael. "I should tell you how we got the 3rd armor piece." Just her sly smile was enough for Michael to paint a rough picture of what had happened. At least he was glad that she didn't kill the war god. "Let's walk and talk." Gaia grabbed his arm and started to walk toward the waterfall. On her way, she told Michael everything that had happened. Michael listened to her story in utter silence. What she did was the right move. If he was in her shoes, he would have done the same. But Michael worried about the reaction from Gondolin for attacking a war god. "We need to meet the Empress and sort this out. We have enough enemies to deal with," Michael sighed. Since the Empress was arriving with only Bellinor, Michael had a feeling she was not looking for a war. Otherwise, she would have sent an army instead of coming to meet him alone. Chapter 792. Master Tactician Nithrol. The Empress Scroll was inscribed with special runes. Michael just had to write the place and time of their meeting, and the Empress would be notified on the other end. Michael chose a secluded mountain peak in the Azer continent. Obviously, the time of their meeting was midnight, when he would be at his strongest. Michael sent Arya and Eladir to ensure the place was void of any traps. Although he picked the place, he didn't plan to go there without any plans. Michael left Gaia back in the castle and went to meet the Empress alone. He didn't even bring Nightmare or Azazel. The mountain Michael chose was covered in pearl-white snow. When he was flying toward his destination, the serrated mountains loomed in the distance. He made his way towards them as he had to use arch energy to warm up his body. The blanketing flower white was brooded over the land. Just as he approached, a shoot of snow detached itself and went trundling down one of the mountains. It slid over the knotted edge and then crashed into the chasm below. The silence that followed was spine-chilling. Michael flew to the tallest peak of the mountain, where he asked the Empress to meet him. The heaven-touching apex of the mountain was drenched in brilliant light. Spikes of thin light from the stars above impaled the snow in a bristling, moving line. All across one's line of sight, the tips of the mountain range stuck up like a row of thorns. Swaddled around them were necklaces of powdery snow. The air became arctic cold as Michael came closer to the top. By the time Michael arrived at the top, he saw an elven woman and a man in a golden fur coat waiting for him. Michael recognized the elven woman as the Empress thanks to all those portraits in Gondolin. It wouldn't be an understatement to say every house in Gondolin had at least one portrait of the Empress. The people loved her that much. It was not a forced gesture, but the people worshipped her like a goddess. To be honest, Michael respected the Empress, Nithrol. Despite her military might, she only used wars as a last resort. Instead, she advocated peace through diplomacy. That's what Michael loved about her. The people who feared him respected Nithrol. As he descended to the ground, Belinur's body tensed up. Michael was not in his Dark Lord armor. On the contrary, he just wore a long black coat with sleeves rolled up to his elbow, a black shirt with his first 3 buttons opened up, and matching black trousers and boots. His shoulder-length hair fluttered in the cold breeze. Belinur expected a bulky man with an evil face in black armor. But Michael surprised him with his rather normal look. Even the Empress was stunned. To Michael's surprise, the Empress was just a few months' cultivation away from breaking through to the immortal stage. There was something strange about her. "Your Imperial Majesty," Michael addressed the Empress with her title. She smiled when she sensed the respect in his tone. She lived long enough to differentiate between puffery and true respect. Unlike the reports she heard, the Dark Lord seemed warm and friendly. But she could see the devil within him. He was capable of unimaginable things. In her mind, what happened to Ithalin and the Thusian Empire was just a sample of what he could do. "How may I address you?" asked Nithrol with a warm smile. To Michael's surprise, she seemed different from the racist elves he had seen in Mazeroth. "I think Ghost would do just fine," said Michael. It was a simple gesture to get onto the Empress' good side. He didn't want to be her enemy even if he couldn't be her friend. The last thing Michael wanted was to antagonize the Empress and make enemies out of the most powerful empire. "This is Belinur. You might know him," said Nithrol, looking at Belinur. "It's unfortunate that you bought something of mine." Michael's tone was neither too arrogant nor apologetic. He didn't even ask for forgiveness, which might be considered a sign of weakness. The Empress walked toward the mountain's edge. As far as one could see, there was nothing but an endless forest blanketed with snow. Michael joined her at the edge and watched the scenery in silence. Except for the howling wind, they heard no sound. Michael broke this silence after a few minutes. "Why did you want to meet me, Your Imperial Majesty?" asked Michael. He was curious, to say the least. "The same reason why you agreed to this meeting," answered Nithrol. "Alliance." Michael joked as the Empress chuckled. Belinur was truly surprised. The Dark Lord seemed so calm and cool beside the Empress. Belinur forgot the last time someone had talked to her like this. "Not so fast, Ghost," said the Empress. "I heard you don't like beating around the bush." "You heard right," said Michael. "Blackmane had to say lots of interesting things about you." Michael recalled his meeting with the pirate Lord Blackmane. The pirates used to think the most powerful pirate lord was on a voyage, looking for treasures, but instead he was serving the Empress all those times. He came to meet Michael in Aden when he abolished the pirates and killed pirate Lord Vance. He struck a deal with the Dark Lord for an island on the southern continent. In addition, Michael agreed not to attack the merchants from Gondolin or any other elven kingdoms. Michael had been keeping his part of the bargain till to this date. In exchange, the Royal Navy had never stepped foot on the southern continent. As a result, there was no pillaging or piracy in the southern continent seas. Instead, the merchants paid 20% of whatever they brought to the Dark Army patrolling the seas. The pirates used to hate things they got without pillaging. But after a while, they started to love getting paid doing nothing. They just had to patrol the seas like border patrol and take things from the merchant ships. If a Dark Army ship had decided to take more than 20% or harm a merchant ship, Corey would take them to a rocky island and leave the crew there to rot in the sun alive. Fortunately, no pirate had tried to break the rules. "Speaking of him, I haven't seen him since Aden." "How is he doing?" asked Michael. "In seclusion, I am afraid," answered Nithrol. The Empress voluntarily gave him a bit of secret news. She wanted the Dark Lord to know that he was not the only one who could make Southerners stronger with cultivation. Michael was slightly surprised but didn't worry about Southerners cultivating in her army. He expected a lot more surprises from the Empress. "I want the same deal I got from you earlier, Ghost. No more attacking my people." Her voice became a bit colder. "It won't happen again." Michael requested nothing from the Empress. Although Belinur bought the armor piece, they had no right to attack him. Gaia might have left him alive, but she attacked him nonetheless. It was kind of the Empress to let go of the matter so quickly. "Was that the only reason you asked me to meet you?" Michael asked the Empress. The Empress stared at the sight before her without uttering a word. Her gaze was locked onto the horizon. Silence fell over them. Finally, the Empress took a deep breath. "What do you know about Han Torum?" Michael picked his brain and remembered the name. He heard about this place when he was in Gondolin. "If I am right, it's one of the great 8 clans. Han Torum is a dwarven clan. Why did you ask?" "Recently, they started to build some dangerous contraptions. Weapons, to be precise. These are untested weapons that are capable of hurting thousands. Sounds like great weapons. If it's capable of hurting that many people, then it doesn't matter whether they are tested or not," said Michael. He knew all about the history between the elves and the dwarves. It was really surprising to see the dwarves still looking for revenge even hundreds of years later. He had to admire their resolve to hurt the elves. If those weapons made the Empress ask for the Dark Lord's help, Michael could tell how dangerous these weapons were. He felt curious as he knew dwarves' talent for building mass destruction weapons. "And explain to me why I should care about the dwarves and their little toys?" asked Michael. The dwarves might be great builders and engineers but lacked powerful cultivators. If Michael wished, he could bring mass destruction upon their kingdoms. Simple. "The Guardian Guild is negotiating with the dwarves to buy those weapons as we speak," said the Empress. She was nonchalant. "I have a feeling you don't like the Guardian Guild getting stronger. With these weapons and Supreme Guardian's guidance, they could change the tide of war. What do you want me to do, Your Imperial Majesty?" asked Michael, although he knew what was in her mind. "Whatever you want. I'd appreciate it if you could talk some sense into those dwarves. If you do that, you'd be helping both you and me." Michael saw a glimpse of a master tactician who decimated the dwarves single-handedly. She was using him to deal with the dwarves. Judging by the Empress character, Michael knew she would have tried to talk with the dwarves. However, he didn't think the dwarves had listened to her. Those bulky, bearded bastards hated nothing more than the elves. They would gladly give their lives to see the elven kingdom burn to the ground. Michael wouldn't have meddled with this issue if this matter didn't involve 2 great clans. It would be a headache for Michael in the long run if the dwarves built weapons for the Guardian Guild. Instead, he wanted to get his hands on those weapons. Else, he would destroy them before they fall into the hands of the Guardian Guild. "I will look into this," said Michael without making any promises. The Empress smiled. With a single negotiation, she made the Dark Lord himself deal with the dwarves. Now she had fewer things to worry about and more time to develop her empire. "Good move, Nithrol," Michael said to himself. Chapter 793. Preparations for Demon's Grave. After he met with the Empress, Michael returned to his castle. He summoned Gaia and Adelia to the meeting room. Michael told them about the meeting and how the Empress wanted him to deal with Han Torum. Initially, Gaia seemed furious at the Empress for using them as her pawn, but after hearing the deal between the dwarves and the Guardian Guild, she calmed down. "First, we need to know more about Han Torum and Dalgarum," said Michael. Dalgarum was a dwarven kingdom where Han Torum was located. However, the dwarves were extremely cautious about foreigners, especially other race members. Visiting Dalgarum as a human would only get him extremely vulgar remarks and scorns. "We need diversity in our army and subordinates," said Michael. At that moment, most of his subordinates consist of humans. Although his army had vampires, a few demi-humans, and a couple of orcs, most of whom were humans. Michael always thought of changing that, but he didn't have the time to recruit more people, especially when their expenses exceeded their income. "You know we can't afford to recruit more people," said Gaia. "I am working on that. Some of the things I need to forge my swords are in the Demon's Grave." "Demon's Grave?" Adelia almost shouted. Demon's Grave was the most dangerous realm in the world. No one, even immortals, feared going to that place. Granted, it contained countless treasures and rare plants, yet they weren't worth their lives. "Whatever I find there would be worth millions or even billions. It will keep us floating until we find a permanent source of income." Michael had something in mind, but he needed some special herbs. The realm didn't only contain the materials to forge swords but also create something that would rain gold coins. "If we go to the Demon's Grave, who's going to deal with the dwarves?" asked Gaia. To her shock, Michael shook his head. You are not coming with me, Gaia creased her brows while clenching her fist. She hated sending Michael alone to the most dangerous place in the world. If she was there, she could have his back. I made my decision. You are to deal with the dwarves and those weapons they are building. Michael's voice was stern. The look in his eyes left no room for Gaia to negotiate. In the end, she could only agree. At least take Nightmare or Vidora with you, said Gaia. Michael thought about her suggestion for a few moments and decided to take Vidora with him. Because he wanted to spend more time with Vidora. Besides, they might help him on his journey through the demon's grave in one way or another. At least he would have someone to talk to. I will take Vidora with me, Gaia heaved a sigh of relief. While I'm gone, deal with Han Torum. Try to snatch the weapons for us. If you can't, destroy them. I don't want those to reach the Guardian Guild, said Michael. Although Gaia was reluctant to stay here while he was in the demon's grave, she knew the importance of the task at hand. Hence, she didn't argue with him. After everything was said and done, Michael dismissed Adelia and Gaia. He wanted to be alone for some time. In a blink of an eye, he reached his room from the meeting hall. Before leaving for the demon's grave, he needed to do some things as preparations. One of them was meditation. He sat on his bed with his eyes closed. He ignored the sounds outside and random thoughts in his mind. It took him a few moments to clear his mind of everything. Michael lost track of time. By the time he opened his eyes, the sun had woken from its slumber to paint the world with its golden rays. Of course, the dark ocean remained as dark and gloomy as ever. He put on his old Dark Lord armor and went to the armory. The armory was a spacious hall with hundreds or even thousands of armor stands and weapon racks. At that moment, they had more racks and stands than actual armors and weapons. Such a sorry state, Michael sighed. His growing army desperately needed new weapons and armors. Many in the world still didn't realize how hard it was to be the Dark Lord. They thought that he'd just kill people and stay in the castle. But in reality, he had to deal with all day-to-day things, even when he had subordinates. He walked toward a weapon rack, where he saw several swords lined up. He randomly picked a few and put them in his system storage. He then turned his head toward a black metal door in the corner. When he pushed the door, it opened with a creak. He saw several crates filled with colorful points and pills. Michael waved his hand as a couple of crates, and a bunch of pills disappeared from the room. He had no time to refine new pills and potions. Hence, he took them from the storage. After taking everything he needed, Michael went to the surveillance room to meet Azazel. On his way, he greeted the Dark Army soldiers guarding the castle. My lord, Azazel immediately bowed when he saw Michael entering the room. Michael stared at the mirrors with various size in them. The surveillance room in the castle was just a temporary setup. Their main setup was still in the dark forest. But Michael didn't come to monitor the mirrors. Azazel, bring me the map that shows the entrance to the demon's grave, said Michael. Unlike Gaia and Adelia, Azazel was neither surprised nor shocked by Michael's words. To him, it was only natural for the Dark Lord to venture into places where normal beings could not. As far as Azazel was concerned, the demon's grave would be no challenge for the Dark Lord. Give me a second, my lord. Azazel disappeared from Michael's sight for a second. Then he appeared again with a scroll. Here it is, my lord. Azazel handed over the scroll to Michael. Michael opened the scroll to see the map of the Azer continent. The demon's grave was marked with the skull. The entrance was located at the edge of this world. There was nothing but an endless ocean around it. Sailing to the entrance was not an option because of the dangers along the way, such as raging storms, violent sea monsters, and lightning storms that were powerful enough to kill a soul-refining stage cultivator instantly. One only had a slight chance of reaching the entrance by flying. Once he had left the Azer continent, there would be no place for him to rest or land. I suggest bringing arch-energy crystals with you, my lord. It would take 7 nights and 7 days to reach the entrance from here. You'll need to replenish your energy, said Azazel. Although there were pills to replenish one's energy, the arch-energy crystals were several times more powerful than them. Moreover, they could be absorbed faster. I was thinking the same, said Michael as Azazel handed over a space ring filled with arch-energy crystals to Michael. Michael liked Azazel's initiative. He patted Azazel on the back. "Bring Vidora to Raylene's garden," said Michael before leaving the surveillance room. Afterward, he flew straight atop his usual meditation spot. The air on top of the Sword Hilt Mountain smelled like sweet flowers. Raylene's flowers blossomed, swaying left and right with the cool breeze. Michael could see the entire floating mountain from the spot. He noticed the castle construction works had been slowed down due to a lack of gold coins. Hopefully, his venture into the demon's grave would change the current situation. If it wasn't for Gaia's extraordinary talent for managing a treasury, he would have gone bankrupt by now. Noah put a huge dent in his plans by closing down the majestic chains in Hades. Because of that, Michael had to find something that could not be closed down. He had just the right thing in his mind. Unfortunately, he had to go deep into the demon's grave to get the required items. Michael waited for Azazel to bring Vidora to him while Nightmare accompanied Gaia on her journey to Dalgarum. As Michael was enjoying the gloomy yet captivating sight of the dark ocean, Azazel arrived at the place with Vidora atop his shoulder. "Where are we heading?" asked Iag with excitement glimmering in her eyes. "Demon's grave," Michael calmly said. The excitement in Iag's eyes multiplied by several times. Her eyes sparkled. "Really? Man, I hate being cooped up in here." "Finally, some worthy adventure," said Iag. Even Cain agreed with her, which was a rare sight to see. They flapped their tiny wings and landed just right on Michael's shoulder. "Please tell me we are leaving right now," Sarba asked, tilting his head. Michael rubbed his chin gently with a smile. "We are leaving right now," said Michael. Sarba and Iag grinned ear to ear. Even Michael smiled, looking at their funny expression. Chapter 794. Fighting a Kraken. Michael flew toward the demon's grave without taking a break. Some of the people in Azer noticed a black streak in the sky due to Michael's spell. The sea stretched endlessly, going past the horizon. A sparkling blue blanket covered everything as far as one could see. It was a rolling, rollicking blanket, teeming with life. The salty smell was so strong that one could taste it dancing on one's taste buds. Vidora enjoyed the sight around them. The ocean itself looked like an enormous pool of wonder. It was exceptionally blue that day with a slight green undertone. Simply put, the sea seemed calm, but the storm was on the horizon. Although the ocean looked calm and serene, Michael sensed powerful creatures swimming deep under the water in his environmental scanning. "Be on alert," Michael warned Vidora. Sarba had keen senses, but it wasn't as developed as Michael's environmental scanning. It took Sarba a few minutes to sense the threats lurking under them. Iag saw a silhouette of a giant creature deep within the ocean. She could swear she felt it was staring directly at her. "Hey, Ghost. Something is in there," said Iag. "I know. Let's just ignore it," said Michael. The unknown creature was at the fusion stage. With its enormous size and buddies surrounding it, battling the creature would just be a waste of time and energy. Besides, Michael wasn't here to terrorize the sea creatures. Instead, he wanted to reach the demon's grave without a battle. He quickened his pace and put a safe distance between himself and the creature. The more he flew toward the demon's grave, the darker and worsening the weather became. He was warned of the weather and the powerful creatures lurking in the sea around the demon's grave. It would take an immense amount of luck and power to reach the entrance. So one could only imagine how dangerous the demon's grave would be. There was a reason why even the immortals feared this place. Vidora wrapped their tail tightly around Michael's neck to escape the raging storm. Streaks of crimson-red lightning flashed across the sky. The sky was painted with a mix of eerie red and black. Coupled with the dark blue sea, the sight had a devilish tone to it. Moreover, the howling wind sounded like something otherworldly screaming to escape the sea itself. Powerful lightning struck from the sky chaotically. Michael navigated through the lightning storm without getting struck, thanks to his cat-like reflex. "The name Demon's Grave fits this place," said Sarba. He seemed slightly uncomfortable looking at the red sky. "Is there any connection between the demon race and this place?" asked Iag. Cain was surprised that Iag actually asked something that didn't sound ridiculous in his mind. To be honest, he was about to ask that question to Michael. "We'll find out. But I think there might be some connection, said Michael. He still didn't know who else knew about the existence of demons. As far as he knew, Azazel was the only living demon in this world. If it wasn't for the system, he couldn't have brought the demon back to life. Michael was confident with enough time and resources, he could not only find more demons but also resurrect this magical race. Once he had hundreds or thousands of Azazels, he would be a real threat to all the great 8 clans. Did you find anyone who ventured into the demon's grave and survived? Asked Cain. Michael shook his head. No. But I heard there is someone in the Guardian Guild who knows about the place more than anyone in the world. Even Lord Information has little to nothing of this place, said Michael. Which makes this place more worth the visit, Iag said as Michael suddenly stopped flying. Iag frowned. Why did you stop? Asked Iag. On the other hand, Sarba realized the reason behind Ghost's action. He sensed a powerful being moving faster and faster toward them. In the ocean before them, Iag vaguely saw a shadow emerging from deep within. Michael slowly flew backward. According to his senses, the creature was gigantic. Moreover, it was at the half-immortal stage. Suddenly, several ripples appeared in the ocean. Michael felt like the sea itself shaking to the core. As he flew backward, a monstrous creature dashed out of the ocean. It was a giant octopus-like creature. Kraken, Michael mumbled under his breath. He never thought a creature from folklore and legends back on Earth would come to life before his eyes. The books didn't do justice to this monster. Compared to its size, Michael looked puny. It had countless tentacles that could destroy a man-o warship with a single swipe. The monster roared viciously. Its roar sounded louder than any thunderclaps Michael had ever heard. Just its size and appearance were enough to terrify anyone. Even Michael was stunned by the Kraken. Its dark red skin glistened under the red sky. A putrid smell nauseated Sarba's senses. This smell came from the Kraken itself. The Kraken stared at Michael with its big eyes. For some reason, the Kraken held extreme hatred in its eyes. Michael felt like the Kraken, and he had some kind of history. But Michael had never even imagined a Kraken being alive, let alone having a history with them. Once again, the Kraken roared. It caused the ocean to sway to one side. After the second roar, the Kraken swung one of its tentacles at Michael. For a giant monster, its movements were fast. But Michael was faster. He simply evaded the tentacle by flying away. The tentacle missed as it hit the ocean, creating an explosion. Michael immediately fought back with lightning. He raised his hand as black bolts of lightning crackled around his arms. These tiny bolts merged to form one single bolt of lightning that shot out of his fingertips. Since it was a giant creature, Michael didn't need to worry about his aim. His lightning bolt hit the Kraken's skin near the left eye. The monster roared as the lightning bolt penetrated its thick skin for a meter. Some kind of purple liquid spurted out of the wound as the monster roared in pain. Michael wondered where the sound was coming from. He didn't stop with one bolt of lightning. Instead, he continued to bombard the creature with his black lightning bolts. The monster roared as it swung its tentacles viciously, hoping to crush Michael. Yet, none of its tentacles were able to touch Michael. If he was at the half-immortal stage, the creature could have stood a chance. But now, the creature could only dream of defeating him. To Michael, this Kraken was just a dummy to test his powers. Michael flew around the creature, firing bolt after bolt at the monster. Suddenly, Michael dashed forward. A wave of dark flames suddenly shot out of Michael and burnt the creature's skin. The waves of flames pulsated from Michael's body. Because of the dark flames, the temperature in the air rose significantly. The creature swung its entire body viciously to escape Michael's wrath. While shooting lightning bolts from his fingertips, Michael raised his other hand as the sky above him rumbled. Soon, darker clouds appeared in the sky. Iag raised her head as she saw several boulders materializing in the air. Suddenly, they were lit with crimson-red flames. He finally cast his meteor spell to end the monster's pathetic life. At that moment, 5 large meteors soared through the air toward the Kraken. Sarba heard a sizzling noise in the air as he smelled a strange burning smell. It took a few seconds for the Kraken to see the meteors. The creature roared. But this time, the roar was tinged with fear. The creature tried to submerge under the water as Michael fired a lightning bolt at its eyes. A splash of white goo spurted out of its eye. The creature was stunned by the attack. Utilizing this moment of stun, Michael brought down the meteors upon the Kraken's head. Upon hitting the creature's head, the first meteor exploded into fiery bits and pieces. Purple blood splashed across the sea and floated on the ocean. The second meteor muffled the Kraken's roar. This time, the creature's skull was caved in. Even the ocean's surface was on fire because of the spell. At last, the third meteor hit the Kraken with enough force to turn its head into a purple mush. The Kraken let out a miserable cry before falling down into the ocean. "You sealed your fate when you decided to attack us," Iag snickered. Michael immediately dashed at the creature before cutting down chunks of flesh from its body. In addition, he scooped up the purple blood in a large glass mug for his alchemy experiments. Even though the creature was injured too much to fight, Michael didn't hear any notifications from the system. It meant one thing: the monster was still alive. Michael slowly flew toward the creature's mushy head. He hovered right between the Kraken's eyes. For a moment, Michael remained silent. He respected the monster, although it chose to attack him and died a pathetic death. He raised his hands slowly and pointed his fingertips at the creature. Soon, a thick black bolt of lightning fired out of his fingertips. When the bolt hit the monster's already damaged head, it exploded into a purple mist. Michael flew upward in a blink of an eye, avoiding all the purple blood and pieces. Finally, Michael heard the system's notification in his head. He felt pity for the creature and almost felt bad for slaying such a majestic monster. But the Kraken left him no choice. Deep down, Michael started to learn about the dangerous lurking in the ocean. He knew this was just a start, and more threats would be on his way. After taking a deep breath, Michael continued his journey toward the entrance. Chapter 795 Intelligent Bat. After killing the Kraken, who was at the half-immortal stage, Michael received 1 million experience points. He still needed 7 million experience points to reach level 5. Just the Kraken on the outskirts was at the half-immortal stage. So Michael could imagine how strong the creatures and dangers inside the demon's grave were. They continued to head toward the demon's grave while hoping for another monster to jump out of the sea. Michael sensed several other half-immortal monsters, but they didn't attack him. Michael couldn't recognize some of the monsters. For instance, he vaguely saw a creature that resembled a giant human eye. The monster blinked when Michael sensed it. He flew for 2 days without a battle. Some creatures were able to sense the overwhelming power radiating from Michael. They were intelligent enough not to attack him. On the third day, Michael was flying with Vidora, expecting trouble. He couldn't tell if it was morning or evening. Everything looked the same in the ocean around the demon's grave. The area looked as gloomy and eerie as ever. After flying for a few hours, Michael noticed violent ripples in the sea. He slowed down as he sensed a fusion stage monster before him. Water splashed all over the place when it dashed out of the sea. This red monster had a large spherical body crowned with horns that floated slowly through the air. They had a single blue eye over a large mouth which was persistently twisted into a Cheshire cat-like grin, showing a series of nasty teeth and a brownish interior. The monster immediately belched a ball of blue lightning while creating tiny monsters similar to it from the back. These tiny monstrosities flew toward Michael, making some kind of cackling noises. A lightning bolt shot out of Michael's fingertips at one of the tiny monsters. When the lightning bolt hit the tiny monster, it exploded with enough force to push Michael back several meters. Vidora was almost thrown out of Michael's shoulder. Quickly, they crawled into Michael's armor. At that moment, the ball of lightning reached Michael. Before it could hit Michael, the responsive shield appeared around Michael, saving Michael from getting blasted off. The lightning ball exploded upon hitting the responsive shield. To Michael's surprise, he got no experience points for killing a tiny monster. He sensed several other monsters moving toward them due to their battle. Hence, Michael decided to end this battle sooner than later. He immediately cast the ring of fire to burn down all the tiny monsters at the same time. The dark flames pulsated in rings around Michael. One by one, the creatures exploded. Unfortunately, the big monster was way out of the flames' reach. Hence, it escaped the dark flames. The sky was lit with bright flashes as the creatures exploded like bombs. The big monster created more of them as fast as Michael killed them. Since these tiny creatures gave him no experience points, Michael decided to kill the big one. In a blink of an eye, Michael evaded the lightning ball and dashed at the monster using a lightning dash. Michael enveloped himself with the dark flames on his way. When the creature opened its mouth to belch another lightning ball, Michael moved his body, facing the ocean, and shot through the creature's mouth like a bullet. The creature howled as one could see a hole on the other side of its mouth. The creature hovered aimlessly in the air, making groaning noises. Michael did not wait till the monster bled to death. On the contrary, he bombarded the monster with lightning bolts. He cast the ring of fire once again to burn the creature to a crisp. The monster couldn't stand a chance against two of Michael's spells at the same time. As the creature was burning, the air reeked with a strange putrid smell. Michael immediately unsheathed his swords, cutting a few chunks of flesh and scooping down its bluish blood as samples. With these samples, he might be able to figure out the origins of these monstrosities. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage level 4 monster. The reward is 500,000 experience points and 10,000 badass points. Michael heard the system notification right before the creature fell into the ocean. Most of its body was charcoaled by the dark flames. The surface turned dark gray as the creature dissolved in the salt water. Is it over? Sarba craned her head out of Michael's armor. We should have fought that ugly. I put her head out again and snickered at Sarba. Although Vidora was at the soul refining stage and just a few months of cultivation away from hitting the fusion stage, their physical body remained small. The system needed to be at level 9 to learn more about Vidora and the reason behind their small physical stature. For now, Michael had bigger things to worry about than Vidora's physical transformation. Nightmare went through his metamorphosis when he reached the body strengthening stage. Ever since then, he had been growing up to be a big dragon. However, Vidora remained almost the same as when they were hatched from the egg. Due to their small physical body, fighting other monsters was tough even though they had the cultivation power to do so. Moreover, they didn't have powerful offensive abilities yet. Ayag could seldom create sonic waves, while Sarba had special senses. Other than that, they had nothing. On his way forward, Michael battled a few more monsters similar to the one he had fought earlier. He killed them all within a few moments. To him, they were just practice dummies. But the closer he moved to the demon's grave, the stronger the monsters became. Even the fusion stage monsters had such ferocity and ruthlessness. If Michael had been at the half-immortal stage, he would have been in trouble. On the night of the third day, Michael thought about taking a bit of rest. Since they had no island or a place to land, he had to stay in the air and replenish his energy. By the time Michael stopped flying, Vidora had fallen asleep. Michael flew above the clouds to see the crimson-red sky above. He wondered what made the sky remain blood-red around the demon's grave. For some strange reason, he had a feeling that a massive war had taken place here. The moon glowed in the distance, but instead of sparkling blue light, it radiated blood red. Despite the monsters around him, Michael stopped flying to take a break. He took out a few snacks and refilled his belly. Then he drank some potions to replenish his energy. He still didn't feel like absorbing the arch-energy crystals in his system storage. While he was gulping down potions, he saw a black line on the horizon. The line moved past the moon. A few seconds later, the black line grew bigger. He looked closer at the thing to see a giant bat flying toward him. It was just as dark as midnight. Except for its razor-sharp white fangs, everything else was black. Surprisingly, the bat was at the fusion stage. The bat didn't back off even after sensing Michael's cultivation stage. This bat was either powerful enough to fight him or extremely stupid to pick a fight. The closer the bat got, the bigger it looked. It casts a giant shadow in the clouds. Without slowing down, the bat dashed at Michael with its claws open. To Michael's surprise, the bat cut him in the elbow before he could dash away. For a monster at the fusion stage, it was extremely agile and fast. He felt a sharp pain in his shoulder for a moment. Then, the APD injected a healing potion into his bloodstream as the wound closed up in a blink of an eye. The bat viciously tried to cut open Michael with its razor-sharp claws. It didn't use any spells or energy attacks but just raw brute strength. Michael swayed his body left and right, evading the claws. He flew around the bat, firing lightning bolts. But the bat barrel rolled and flew away, escaping each and every lightning bolt, which surprised Michael. His lightning bolts were faster than any sniper's, yet the bat evaded it without breaking a sweat. The bat produced a strange clicking noise as it flew around Michael. Michael immediately cast the Ring of Fire because it was an area-off effect spell rather than a precision spell like Ignitia. A wave of dark flames shot out of Michael's body. The cold weather became hot as the temperature in the air rose up. The bat screamed but flew high and swung his body, comfortably evading the flame wave. It kept a safe distance from Michael instead of flying toward him, which showed Michael the bat's intelligence. Michael continued to attack the bat while trying to figure out its weakness. Since it was as fast as him, there was no point or use in casting the meteor spell. The bat proved to be a challenge, even for an immortal. This bat's intention didn't seem to kill him but to exhaust him and his energy. The bat studied Michael's strategy and spell. It was adjusting its battle tactics according to Michael's battle prowess. As they continued their battle, more and more monsters moved toward them. Michael prepared himself for an all-out battle. "I can hear some kind of weird noise from the bat," Sarba whispered to Michael. But Michael didn't hear a sound. Yet again, Sarba's senses were more powerful than Michael's. "Echolocation," Michael mumbled. "Occasionally missing content. Please report errors in time." Chapter 796. Nearing the demon's grave. "The bat is using some kind of noise to move around," said Sarba. He heard a low-pitched whistling noise coming from the bat. Because Michael was born on Earth, he knew about bats. Of course, he didn't do masters on bats, but he knew enough to know the bats navigate using echolocation by emitting high-frequency sound pulses through their mouth or nose and listening to the echo. "Wait a minute. I have an idea." Ayag quickly lifted her head from his armor. "Gee," Ayag growled as though she was trying to belch out something. Michael knew what she was trying to do and gave her the time. He fired flame waves to keep the bat away from him. It took Ayag a few minutes to produce a sonic wave. Michael only saw a ripple in the air but didn't hear anything. However, the bat screeched. It sounded like it was in sudden pain. The bat dived down clumsily. The sonic waves messed up with its high-frequency sound pulses. "Fuck yeah. It worked," Ayag shouted with excitement. Michael used this opportunity. He immediately fired a bolt of lightning that hit the bat right in his belly. The bat screamed in pain. Blood spurted out from its belly. However, the app's skin was surprisingly tough. Even Michael's black lightning bolt was able to penetrate the skin a couple of inches. Michael hit the bat a couple of more times. Unfortunately, when he tried to fly closer and use the dark flames, the bat steadied itself. It quickly flew away from Michael. Meanwhile, Ayag jumped back on Michael's shoulder. Her eyes glimmered with excitement and confidence. This was the first time in a long time Ayag felt such excitement. It felt like something awakened inside her. "Come here, you fucking overgrown rodent," Ayag shouted. The bat returned her snicker with a roar. It kept flying around Michael, hissing like a snake. Since the bat had recovered from the sonic waves effect, it managed to evade Michael's lightning bolts. "Get me closer to the bat," Ayag ordered Michael. He liked the confidence in Ayag's tone. Granted, Michael could have found a weakness using the system and killed it even without the system. However, now he wanted Vidora to fight the bat. He would provide the needed support. Michael flew behind the bat faster than before. The bat was fast, but Michael was faster. If Michael wanted to close the gap between them, he could have done it. Considering Vidora had to fight the bat, Michael kept a safe distance. Keeping Vidora safe while battling the bat was Michael's first priority. The bat flapped its wings as hard as it could to boost forward. Any normal man would see nothing but a blur in the sky because of the bat's speed. "Just a bit closer," Ayag said. Her throat radiated a dim glow. In a blink of an eye, Michael closed the gap between them as Ayag opened her mouth, firing a sonic wave. The bat screeched as it knew what was about to happen. Compared to earlier, Iag's second sonic wave was a couple of times stronger. The sonic wave immediately disoriented the bat. It groaned, flying clumsily in the air. To Michael's surprise, Iag quickly shot another sonic wave. As a result, the bat almost fell down from the sky. Michael turned his gaze towards Sarba and Cain, expecting them to do something. Contrary to his expectation, they did nothing. Hence, Michael had to finish the bat. He couldn't drag the battle for long because of the other monsters around them. The arch-energy crystals and pills in his storage weren't unlimited. While the bat was clumsily flying around, Michael raised his hand as a bolt of lightning shot out of his fingertips. The lightning bolt hit the bat in the wings. He aimed the bat's wings as which seemed the softest part of its body. The lightning bolts created several holes in the wings. Soon, the bat started to roar in agony. He quickly flew closer to the bat and cast the ring of fire once again. Thanks to Iag's disorienting sonic waves, the bat couldn't escape the flame waves. The dark flames burnt its wings. Smoke radiated from its body, along with the smell of burning air. Michael quickly jumped on the bat's body and grabbed its half-burnt wings. The bat screeched as though it was trying to call for help. Iag seemed exhausted after producing 3 consecutive sonic waves. 3 was her limit. Luckily, Michael did not need Iag's help anymore. He grabbed the bat's wings and pulled them toward him. The bat screeched as Michael slowly ripped its wings. Blood spurted out from the joint where the wings met its body. Even Michael couldn't rip its wings off so easily. His muscles and veins under the skin bulged up. He could toss a stone weighing a ton simply but had a difficult time ripping off its wings. The bat flew backward and upside down to shake him off, yet Michael stood firmly on its back. Eventually, the wings slowly started to come off of its back. The blood spurted out of its back stank to high heaven. Finally, Michael let out a roar as he tore off the bat's wings completely. The bat roared in pain as blood oozed down. Without its wings, the bat lost control of its body. It began to dive down toward the ocean, but Michael grabbed the bat by its neck and flew upward. The bat's eyes burned with rage. It tried to rip Michael apart with its claws. Michael let go of its neck and grabbed the bat's claws. The two of them made direct eye contact. Unlike the bat, Michael's eyes were as calm as still water. He just had a smile on his face. Michael locked his hands with the bat's claws, slowly squeezing its claws. Iag hissed as she heard a sickening crunching noise coming from the bat's claws. Michael crushed the claws with his bare hand to make the bat suffer. He was simply annoyed by the bat. Suddenly, Michael's eyes turned pitch black as the dark beams shot out from his eyes. The bat finally stopped moving. In its head were 2 large holes where the dark beams went through. Michael looked at the bat from head to toe as the dark beams cut the bat in half. He tossed one half into the sky above, quickly cut a chunk of flesh, and scooped up a blood sample from the other. By the time the second half of the bat reached him, he cast the ring of fire to burn the body to ashes. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage level 5 monster. The reward is 500,000 experience points and 10,000 badass points. He heard the system's voice in his mind. Before Michael could rejoice about the experience points, he noticed another bat flying toward him. Looking at the bat, Iag slowly raised her head. "I'll take care of it," Michael simply said. He was nonchalant. Slowly, the area around Michael darkened. He waited for the bat to come closer, and when it did, Michael cast the Sileni's spell to slow down the time itself around him. The bat didn't even realize it was trapped in a time-slowing bubble. Michael immediately cast Ignitia, the ring of fire and eyes of doom at the same time. He went all in to finish the bat. All the spells hit the bat, ending its life in an instant. His power almost reached the peak of the immortal stage. The bat simply stood no chance against Michael. Plus, it was trapped in a time-slowing bubble where the bat couldn't react in time to avoid the spells. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage level 6 monster. The reward is 500,000 experience points and 20,000 badass points. Even Sarba and Iag were surprised by what just happened. One moment the bat was reaching out to claw Michael, and the next, it fell down, burnt, and cut. After Michael had killed the bat, He sensed several monsters moving away from him. They were intelligent enough to back off. The cloud of darkness freaked out the weak-willed monsters. They may have been strong in terms of cultivation, but they possessed a weak resolve to fight. Hence, they flew away from Michael when they saw the cloud of darkness. Instead of chasing them down, Michael continued to head toward the demon's grave. If he wasted his energy hunting them down, he would be at a disadvantage after entering the demon's grave. Judging by the monsters he had faced till now, he could only imagine how powerful the monsters inside the demon's grave would be. Michael cracked his neck before heading out. He slowly flew toward his destination, enjoying the sight. After 3 days, he had grown accustomed to the eerie red atmosphere and the monsters lurking under the sea. The following day was uneventful. He faced a couple of monsters, but they all ran away after sensing his power. At the end of the 4th day, Michael noticed a tear on the horizon. The realm tear glowed like a bright green star on the red horizon. According to the map, the realm tear was still 2 days' journey ahead of him. He stopped in the sky to look at it for a few moments. Even from miles away, Michael was able to sense a strange energy radiation from the realm tear. This feeling was similar. It was the same energy radiation he felt inside the shadow realm. Now that Michael had seen his destination, he increased his speed. While flying toward the realm tear, Michael wondered how Gaia was doing with the dwarves and their new weapons. Vidora fell asleep without a worry in the world. The Hydra felt safe with Michael. At that moment, neither of them had an idea about the connection between Hydras and the demon's grave. They only considered the part demon in the name demon's grave and ignored the grave part. They were in for a surprise inside the demon's grave. Having no idea about the things waiting for them inside the realm, Michael and Vidora flew towards it. Chapter 797 Meeting the Mysterious Oracle. Again, Michael continued his journey toward the demon's grave with Vidora. At that moment, he was just 2 days' journey away from reaching the realm tear. On his way, he fought several monsters and reached 5 million experience points. Once he earned another 3 million experience points, he could reach the immortal stage level 5. If he didn't have to save his energy, he could use this place to farm experience points. But exploring the demon's grave without being gnawed by some monsters was more important than farming points. The battles he went through were far from effortless. He had to use both his brawn and brains to defeat the monsters. Unfortunately, Vidora was no help in the battle as they helped him in the battle against the bat. After battling the bat, Michael realized the monsters around the demon's grave were coming out from the realm tear. The closer Michael got to the realm tear, the more he felt a powerful yet strange radiation coming from the realm tear. Thanks to the APD and the system firewall, the radiation did not affect Michael. To Michael's surprise, the radiation did not affect Vidora. Except for Kane, the others slept on Michael's shoulder. Ayag and Sarba snuggled against Michael's neck and slept peacefully. "Hey Ghost," Kane called Michael. His voice was quiet. "I feel like this place and we have some kind of connection," said Kane. Michael was surprised. It was so rare to see Kane share his thoughts. "What do you mean?" asked Michael. Kane turned his head towards Sarba and Ayag. He stared at them as though he was making sure they were asleep. Then he craned his head out, getting closer to Michael. Michael slowed down. A second later, Kane slowly opened his mouth as Michael noticed a dim green ball of light in his mouth. The light resembled the realm tear. The ball of light crackled inside Kane's mouth. Michael's brows arched up. The energy radiation from the light inside Kane's mouth and the realm tear was exactly the same. Michael had so many questions in his mind. "What is it? How long since you could do this?" Michael asked Kane in a husky voice. "Do you remember the accident in the castle?" asked Kane. His question made Michael ponder. A while later, Michael recalled an incident that took the lives of a couple of dwarves when they were building the castle on the floating mountain. He remembered Gaia talking about some explosions that went off because of some drunken dwarves. According to her, the dwarves tried to smoke some herbs to get high and accidentally dropped some sparks in the explosive crates. But judging by Kane's look in his eyes, Michael had a feeling the dwarves weren't the culprits. "Yes, I do," Michael nodded without saying anything else. It was an accident, but the dwarves weren't responsible for the explosions. They did come drunk and tried to smoke near the explosives. But the crates exploded because of this. Kane opened his mouth as it lit up like a Christmas tree for a moment. I accidentally shot out an energy beam which hit the crates. Did they know? Michael looked at Sarba and Ayag. No, Kane shook his little head. How did you manage to shoot an energy beam out of your mouth without them knowing? They are not the sharpest knives in the bunch, Ghost. Kane rolled his eyes. Michael couldn't argue with Kane. Does anyone else know about this? Asked Michael. No, Kane shook his head. We could ask Mugashiku about hydras, but it's too risky, Michael pondered. They resumed flying toward the realm tear while silently discussing the green glow. He is the only hydra in existence, right? Kane asked. Michael noticed a sadness hidden deep within Kane's eyes. If he was the last human in the world, he would feel sad too. Only Vidora would know their pain. But Michael really hoped there were more hydras somewhere in the universe. Life is full of surprises, Kane. Don't lose hope. Michael gently rubbed Kane's head. Thinking about the connection between the realm tear and the green glow in Kane's mouth, Michael headed toward the demon's grave. Luck was on his side as no monsters showed up to attack him. Eventually, the sky darkened. The howling wind was the only companion Michael had besides Vidora. Suddenly, the howling wind stopped. It was like someone had switched off the wind. Everything became deadly silent. Michael halted his pace. Michael sensed nothing in his environmental scanning map. However, he noticed a strange blue orb of light in the sky above him. The light slowly descended toward him. To Michael's surprise, the orb of light slowly transformed into a woman. The woman before Michael had a square face with a rounded jaw, a flat nose, and narrow lips, and her crimson eyes were sparkling with patience and mystery. Her curly long black hair fluttered in the air as she descended from the sky like a goddess wearing red silk robes. The golden nose stud and the piercing in both her ears added a certain charm to the woman's grace. In addition, she wore Rudraksh bead mala around her neck while a red bindi occupied the center of her forehead. If Diana was here, she would instantly remember the woman. She was the same mysterious oracle who visited Diana and lifted the curse on Diana's soul 2 years ago. Read chapter 243 to refresh your memories. To this moment, Michael couldn't sense the woman in his environmental scanning. Moreover, the woman radiated no energy. But she was the farthest thing from a commoner. Any oblivious man would drop to his knees and worship such a graceful woman. Just looking at her soothed Michael's mind and soul. For a few moments, Michael just stared at the woman without uttering a word. I've been waiting for you, Michael, the woman said. Her voice sounded like the perfect melody that mesmerized the soul itself. It took a moment for Michael to realize what he had just heard. He was speechless. How could a strange, mysterious woman call him by his real name? Except for Gaia, no one knew his name in this world. Yet somehow, this woman called him by his name. I know everything about you, Michael, the woman continued. Fortunately, Vidora was deep in their sleep. I couldn't say the same about you, said Michael. How did you know my name? The woman smiled. As I said, I know everything about you, Michael. Your past, your present, and your future. Not everyone could revisit the remnants of their past. Michael creased his brows as the woman continued. The armor pieces aren't the only things that survived your time array, Michael. There are things you cannot reset, said the woman. She kept surprising Michael. For some reason, Michael didn't feel threatened by the woman even after she revealed his darkest secrets. He wondered whether she knew about the system's existence or not. This place is one of the few things your past self left behind. Now it's your responsibility to fix your mistakes. What do you mean by mistakes? Did I cause all this? The demon's grave has existed longer than 2 decades, said Michael as the woman smiled. You really think your past self existed 21 years ago, don't you? Asked the woman. Michael agreed inside. When he came to this world, Abras was 21 years old. So Michael thought the Dark Lord reset the universe 21 years ago and, thus, became an infant. But he doubted his theory after hearing the woman's tone. Michael had a hard time doubting her when she was able to call him by his real name. Then when did my past self exist? Michael questioned the woman. 5,000 years ago. Everything that happened in your life until now already happened 5,000 years ago, said the woman so calmly. On the other hand, Michael's mind went blank. He was stunned to the core. The woman gave Michael a few minutes to get his thoughts together. But it doesn't matter how long ago your past self lived. Because of what you did, so many lives have been affected. Entire races have been wiped off because of you. Now you have the chance to fix everything. Well, most of it, said the woman. You have a second chance in life, Michael. Do not let hatred and anger consume you. Life is more than being a god and wiping out your enemies. Even enemies can become your friends if you show them compassion, Michael chuckled. Tell that to my enemies. They are the ones who want to kill me. Why don't you ask them to show some compassion? Asked Michael. Because they are not the danger, you are. Michael went silent. The woman gestured at Michael to follow her. Since he felt no threat from the woman and wanted to learn more about himself from her, Michael followed her behind. Who are you? Finally, Michael asked the woman about her origin. Instead of an answer, she just smiled. One day in the future, you will know the answer to your question. The time right now is yours, said the woman. You said the demon's grave was created by something I did. What did I do? Asked Michael. Why did you reset the time? Instead of answering Michael, she asked him a question. Michael took a deep breath. He knew that to get more answers, he needed to answer the woman. Plus, he didn't think lying to her was the right move. Hence, he answered her truthfully. I think it has something to do with Gaia. Would you say you did that for love? Asked the woman. Michael nodded his head after a while. You reset the entire universe for love, but there are many kinds of love, Michael, said the woman. I'd greatly appreciate it if you stopped talking in riddles. Michael kept his tone as polite as possible. He did not want to piss off the only person who could give him some answers. Furthermore, she seemed like a being beyond the cultivation stages. Even the system couldn't grasp how powerful she was. I can only give you guidance, Michael. This is your book. So it's you who should write the chapters. Chapter 798 Demon Skeletons. Apparently, I wrote some chapters and have torn them apart, Michael joked. True, but you got new pages to write something different this time, said the woman. You didn't tell me who you are. At least tell me why you are here. The woman stopped floating toward the realm tear. Instead, she turned her calm gaze at Michael. Her gaze swept across the ocean around them. Michael felt a strange energy pulse followed by a ripple in the ocean. You won't be bothered by the creatures anymore, the woman's words surprised Michael. Although he still had to test her words, he didn't think she was lying. After all, she did not need to lie to him about anything. Also, Michael, her gaze fell on Michael once again. Michael felt like her gaze was piercing his soul itself. Every family will have its share of flaws, but just one family is what we have, said the woman. Her gentle words echoed through the sky. Before Michael could ask her anything else, she vanished into thin air. System, what do you think about her? Any idea about her origins? Asked Michael. To Michael's surprise, the system went into complete silence. No matter how many times he asked, the system did not utter a word about the mysterious woman. After a while, Michael could only sigh and continue to fly toward the realm tear. On his way, he recalled her words. He still couldn't wrap his mind around the fact his past self actually lived 5,000 years ago. I must have been freakishly powerful, Michael mumbled under his breath. He saw no point in dwelling on the past. His past self made some mistakes, big ones it seemed, but it didn't mean he would make the same ones once again. In this life, he would go to any length to protect his loved ones. For instance, he promised himself to look after Vidora. If the demon's grave was one of his mistakes, he would fix it. You reset the entire universe for love, but there are many kinds of love, Michael. Michael recalled the woman's words. He felt there might be another reason other than Gaia for him to reset the universe. He wondered what the hell happened 5,000 years ago. As he was flying toward the realm tear, he noticed the monsters moving away from him. Not a single monster dared to attack Michael. He even sensed some immortals' monsters almost as strong as him. They all avoided Michael. Now he realized why even the immortals dared not to visit the demon's grave. If it wasn't for the woman, he would have had to fight all these monsters. With his speed, the realm tear got closer and closer to him. When he eventually reached the realm tear, he was stunned. He expected a tear in the space for 6 feet or something. But to his shock, the realm tear seemed at least 70 feet from top to bottom. He looked small in front of it. Moreover, it radiated overwhelming energy. What the hell? Ayag finally woke up from her slumber. Her eyes went wide when she saw the realm tear. Michael felt a strange force pulling him into the tear. Are you guys ready? Michael asked Vidora. We were born ready, Agay said with excitement tingling in his spine. Finally, Michael stopped resisting the pull and let loose of his body. The realm tear pulled Michael inside as he disappeared into the tear in a blink of an eye. Everything became blank to Michael. He closed his eyes because of the glow. Feeling the pull, Michael remained with his eyes closed. Vidora snuck back into Michael's armor and clenched the robes tightly. They traveled within the tear for an unknown amount of time. Eventually, Michael sensed the brightness dimming down. Suddenly, he felt a powerful pull. Before he could open his eyes and react in time, he fell into a soft grass field with a thud. Michael slowly opened his eyes to see a murky swamp before him. Everywhere he turned, he saw nothing but ancient cypress trees looming out of the murky water. Their brittle bark was weathered and pitted, scored by the marks of nature and man alike. They seemed to have stood the test of time and won. Any oblivious man wouldn't dare venture this deep into the demon's grave anymore. Only the very foolish or the very brave. Or someone with godly powers. Here and there clumps of moss clung desperately, filling the moist air with the scent of decay. The grayish mist covering the swamp added an extra creepiness to the place. Michael picked himself up. His black armor turned brown by the mud. He ascended to the air, but gravity pulled him down back to the swamp. The ground felt semi-solid and gooey. He moved 1 inch, and his feet went 2 inches deeper into the mud. Flying was the quickest route out of the swamp. However, when he tried to ascend toward the sky, a powerful force pulled him down. System, can you do something about gravity? Michael turned to the system for its help. No can do. The system level is too low to change the rules of the demon's grave, said the system, making Michael roll his eyes. So you are useless? Michael sighed. The system did not give Michael an answer as he slowly tried to move forward through the swamp. The smelly water was up to his waist. He couldn't help feeling some weird things brushing past his legs underwater. Hope they are fish, Michael mumbled. His environmental scanning map went haywire for some reason. As a result, he was unable to sense the creatures around him. Just a few minutes into the demon's grave, he was already in a bind. But the swamp was far from something that could stop Michael. He looked at Vidora, who sat atop his shoulder. Try to fly ahead, said Michael. He wanted to know whether gravity affected only him or also Vidora. Vidora murmured before flapping their tiny wings. They hovered in the air and remained in the air without being pulled by gravity. So it only affects me, Michael mumbled. Fly ahead and keep me posted, said Michael. But don't fly too far from me, Vidora nodded and flew away. In Michael's head, keeping Vidora close to him would only prevent them from growing up. They needed to face some challenges and life-or-death situations. After all, Michael and Gaia wouldn't be with them all the time. Only by facing dire situations could they really unlock their potential. Simply put, Michael decided to force them to find their powers. Vidora nodded as they flew ahead to scout the area. Even Michael's X-ray vision seemed blurry because of the strange mist around the swamp. Slowly, he dragged himself through the mud. The swamp water smelled like rotten eggs and spoiled meat. Any other man would have thrown up. But thanks to Michael's tolerance for stink, he controlled himself. Fortunately, Michael faced no monsters or creatures while he was in the swamp. Vidora flew back and forth to keep Michael updated about the swamp. As Michael was moving through the swamp, he finally noticed what seemed to be the shore. He smiled. Finally, but his moment of joy was short-lived as he felt something grabbing his legs. Vidora returned to inform Michael about the land. To their shock, Michael disappeared into the swamp water in a blink of an eye. It happened so fast. Holy shit, ghost, something pulled him inside. The three heads looked shocked and worried at the same time. They shouted for Michael, yet they only saw bubbles and ripples on the swamp water's surface. Inside the swamp, Michael struggled to free himself from the strange thing's grab. He couldn't see what was before him with his naked eyes. So Michael immediately activated his X-ray eyes. As soon as everything turned blue, he saw a dark figure holding his legs. When he turned his vision to normal, he vaguely saw a brownish skeleton. However, it wasn't a human skeleton. On the contrary, it looked humanoid creature with two horns protruding from its skull. He also noticed a few bones that formed a vague shape of wings. The skeleton reminded Michael of Azazel. Wings, horns, and a bulky structure resembled Azazel's physical body. One of the skeletons grabbed Michael's legs, and the other grabbed his shoulder. They tried to drown him. Although drowning wouldn't kill him, Michael wasn't prepared to test his immortality underwater. According to the system, getting killed by other means wouldn't end his life but reset his cultivation. Beheading, on the other hand, would reset his cultivation and make his soul wander until he finds a suitable vessel for the soul. Finding a vessel might take days, months, years, or even decades. Under the water, Michael did not panic. He quickly formed a wind bubble around his head to breathe. The very next moment, the water began to boil because of the dark flames dancing on his hand. The cold water became hot in a few seconds. Michael clenched the skeleton's head with his hand as several cracks formed in the skeleton. In a blink of an eye, the skeleton's head turned into a white powder that dissolved in the water. After taking down the skeleton that was holding his shoulder, Michael turned his focus onto the one grabbing his leg. The dark beams shot out of his hands, creating a sizzling sound. They penetrated the skeleton as it exploded into bits and pieces. Surprisingly, Michael didn't receive any badass points or experience points for taking down the skeletons. System, did you forget something? Michael talked to the system in mind. They are already dead and weak as hell. Why do you expect experience points and badass points for killing such pathetic monsters? The system growled. They didn't feel weak, Michael replied. Mere weak monsters couldn't have pulled him down and held him underwater for a minute. Unlike the system said, they were the farthest thing from being weak. That's because of their innate strength. What did you expect from the monsters in the demon's grave? The system questioned him. Instead of arguing with the system, Michael wanted to escape the swamp water. He hated being watery and stinky. Two streams of dark fire shot out of Michael's hands and propelled him out of the water like a rocket. From outside, Vidora noticed the water being vaporized by something hot. The temperature in the air had risen significantly. It was enough for them to know what was about to happen. As they expected, Michael shot out of the water and dashed toward the shore before the gravity could pull him down. Chapter 799 Skyhall Angels and Demons Grave. Michael quickly dashed toward the shore and landed comfortably on solid land. Even after landing, he vaguely saw the skeletons lurking deep within the swamp. These demon skeletons would wait for another one to drown. Their next victim might arrive next month or year, but they would wait because they had all the time in the world. An equally creepy forest surrounded the murky swamp. Dark and misty forest. The only way forward was through the forest. Unfortunately, gravity was still too strong for him to fly. Should we go into the forest? Asked Sarba, but Michael shook his head. Stay with me, said Michael. Once they had entered the forest, there was a high possibility for them to get lost. Even worse, they could get into trouble with another monster. Until he could cross the forest, he wanted Vidora to be with him. Vidora nodded before landing back on his shoulder. A bone-chilling breeze brushed past him. It was like something calling for him into the forest. Michael ignored these strange feelings. The trees in the forest were malady brown. Grains of poison begrimed the bark and gleamed like witch dust. The decaying air and stifling atmosphere provided the perfect abode for those who worshipped the darkness rather than the light. In the dense shadows, spiders clutched their snare strings. Their webs shimmered like meshed steel dipped in silver. Eyes aflame with hunger, they hoped to dine on weak prey and slurp on hot blood. The deeper Michael went into the forest, the darker it became. Everything in the forest seemed primordial. If this demon's grave was indeed his mistake, as the woman said, this place must be at least 5,000 years old. It was the only explanation for the primordial trees. Their sprawling limbs guarded the darkness, blotting out any sunlight. Their bark was mottled and splotched as if the bubbled soup had been frozen in time on its surface. A pungent tang oozed from every sentient being in the forest. Bewailing sounds ghosted through the trees. Whether it was from the predator or prey, only the forest could tell. It was truly a place to make one's veins freeze over. Everything considered edible in another forest was nauseating here. It left Vidora with the same sickening taste of their own blood. It was a forest to be avoided. Michael navigated through the labyrinth of a forest, trying to find a way out. His black armor turned murky and green because of the moths and mud in the swamp. He ignored the blood-sucking leeches littering the ground and hoped they weren't on him. As he was walking through the forest, he suddenly heard a muffled thud noise. It sounded contrary to all creepy nature sounds. Michael quickly raised his hand as the Mark III grappling hook shot out of his wrist and coiled around the branch above him. Since gravity was too strong, Vidora grabbed Michael by his collar and added an extra boost to the grappling hook. Finally, he reached the top. Thanks to the trees being so cluttered, Michael was able to walk on one branch to reach the other. He crouched and strolled without making a sound. Despite being immortal, Michael did not act so brashly. There would always be someone stronger than him until he reached the absolute top. The thudding sound continued to echo through the forest rhythmically. He followed the sound that sounded louder and louder. Eventually, the forest opened up to a circular area void of any trees. The surrounding trees were neatly pruned to prevent someone from looking at the place from above. The thick canopy covered the place, only letting a few rays of light through. To Michael's shock, he saw a portal gate and several people armed to the teeth, digging the ground with some kind of contraption. It looked like a giant spoon that created a thud sound everything it dug into the ground. These men were adorned in light blue armor with angel-like wings made of sharp blades. Michael couldn't see their faces through their masks. With the golden spear in their arms and the wings, they somehow reminded Michael of angels. What surprised him more was he had seen them before. They looked exactly like the one who invaded the Nether Realm. Delar had to stop bringing undead from the Nether Realm with the portal open because of these people. They are the same men who harvested the undead in the Nether Realm, Cain whispered to Michael while Sarba and Ayag remained completely silent. They didn't dare to make a sound that might draw the attention of these armored soldiers. The angels of the Sky Hall, that's who they were. Unfortunately, Michael did not know. He had a closer relationship with them than he actually knew. Diana, his mother, was one of them. In fact, she led a powerful group of angels. Look, Sarba whispered as Michael noticed the angels digging a black casket from the ground. The contraption dug the ground deep enough to reveal what seemed to be a burial site. One by one, the angels dragged the caskets out and threw them into the portal behind them. At that moment, Michael counted 11 angels. Surprisingly, they were all at the fusion stage. This piqued Michael's curiosity. A run-of-the-mill organization wouldn't use fusion stage cultivators for grunt work. Since there was no insignia or anything that could be used to reveal their organization, Michael had to move closer. He took out a spider from the system storage and let it crawl toward the angels. I hate this place. It gives me chills. For me, it's the smell. The place smells like dead. Michael began to hear the angels as the spider crawled closer to them. I am glad this is the last grave site, Michael frowned. If this was the last grave site, it certainly meant these people were digging up more sites. Whatever was inside the caskets, these people might have hundreds or even thousands of them. No matter what, he wanted to take a look inside the casket. However, alerting these soldiers didn't sit well with Michael. His instincts told him not to kill them, although he could slaughter them quite easily. But easy didn't mean he should do it. Silence. Why do I feel like we are being watched? Suddenly, an angel turned around in Michael's direction. Michael quickly moved behind the bark to hide. The angels slowly walked toward Michael. Their instincts and perception really surprised Michael. He kept a safe distance from them, yet they somehow managed to sense him. Even though he didn't want to fight them, He would have no choice but to fight if they found him. Michael prepared himself for a battle when an angel raised his voice. "Hey, we are ordered to return." The angels who were on their way to the tree Michael was on halted their steps. "He is asking for us." The voice had a tinge of fear and panic. Luckily for Michael, whoever called them was far more terrifying to make them wait than to find him. Finally, the angels turned back and returned to the portal. At first, one of the angels flicked their wrists as the giant spoon-like digging machine flew straight into the portal. Then, they tossed the caskets behind the machine. Afterward, the angels themselves flew into the portal, disappearing from the forest. By the time Michael decided to move his body, the place was empty. The angels didn't bother to close the hole they dug, which worked in Michael's favor. He leaped from branch to branch and eventually landed on the palace where the portal was a few moments ago. The hole was picked clean. As far as Michael could see, there were no caskets left behind. He looked around the place for a few moments to see if they had left behind something that could be used to unveil their identities. Unfortunately, Michael's search bore no fruit. After a brief moment of looking around, Michael returned to the front of the hole they had dug. This hole was at least 8 feet wide and 15 feet deep. "You can't jump down there," said Iag. She was right. Gravity was too strong for Michael to fly upward again. It was weird and strange, but he could do nothing about it. Hence, he decided to drop one of his drones back into the hole. The drone slowly hovered down into the dark hole. They patiently waited outside to get a glimpse of anything but mud. A few minutes later, when Michael was about to conclude that the angels had grabbed all the caskets, Michael noticed the edge of a casket sticking out of the mud. "Found something," Michael said to Vidora. "A casket?" asked Iag as Michael nodded. "Since you can't jump down and carry it on your back, let us go down there," Sarba suggested. Having no other choice, Michael agreed. After he nodded, Vidora leaped into the hole from his shoulder. They dived down until they reached the drone. Despite their small physical stature, they were blessed with enough raw power to carry the casket in their legs. But first, they had to dig out the casket. "Little help here," Iag shouted. Their claws weren't sharp enough to dig, so Michael shot dark beams out of his eyes to dig out the casket. Vidora flew aside, avoiding the dark beams. The mud turned ashes around the casket. "Careful. Don't hit the casket," said Sarba. Soon, the casket began to shake. Vidora tightly held the casket by its edge and pulled it out of the mud. "It's heavy," Iag cussed. The casket was surprisingly heavier than she initially expected. She wondered what the heck was inside. Eventually, Vidora brought the casket back and dropped it with a loud thud. The casket cracked in several places. It was apparent the casket was ancient. But still, Michael was able to see several runes engraved in the casket. He inspected the casket thoroughly. When he activated his X-ray vision, he saw a silhouette of a humanoid being inside. Michael was about to open the casket when he heard twigs and dried leaves breaking behind him. Someone was behind him. Instead of panicking, Michael slowly turned around. Chapter 800 Prank gone wrong. While Michael was in the demon's grave, Sabrina was returning home from Azair. Tired and exhausted by flying all the way to Penn Town. The once salmon and lavender sky transformed into a vast expanse of jet black. The night laid down a blanket of darkness. When Sabrina tilted her head skyward, she could clearly see millions of bright stars dotted on the black sky at night as the thick gloomy clouds shaded over the luminous moon covering its entirety. Penn Town glimmered like a Christmas tree on the horizon. Despite the time, the streets were bustling with crowds and carriages. The baby shower of Princess Catherine and Prince Andrews was a hot topic in the continent. Almost every prominent figure in the world was invited to the event. Usually, coming across a fusion stage warrior was as rare as a four-leaf clover. But that was proven wrong in Penn Town. These fusion stage cultivators arrived at the Penn Town a month early to ensure security. In addition to powerful cultivators, several invisible arrays and runes covered the entire town. These specialized arrays were able to read one's thoughts and alert security if they bore any ill intentions. Only the Empress of Ara had these arrays. But thanks to Rowena, the Winstons could get them. As Sabrina flew toward the manor, She felt a warmth in her body. She didn't freak out as she knew the arrays were scanning her. In the distance, the Winston Manor stood majestically glimmering. The servants went all out in decorations. They almost turned the manor unrecognizable. Rare and beautiful flowers waved their heads, welcoming the gates. Special orbs fired light beams, turning the fountain water a colorful rainbow. The servants of Winston Manor noticed Sabrina in the air and quickly bowed. Their eyes glistened with joy because of their young Miss return. Young Miss Sabrina is back. Inform Lady Diana and Lady Imelda. The servants cheered as Sabrina flew straight into the manor through the roof door. Missy. As soon as Sabrina landed on the rooftop, she heard a wobbly voice. Surprisingly, she saw Samuel standing before her with his usually neatly combed hair messed up. He looked funny with his nervous smile. Judging by the smell of rum coming from him, Sabrina could guess what made Samuel walk clumsily and smile like a guilty child. Well, Sabrina mused. Are you drunk, Grandpa Samuel? The answer was obvious to Sabrina. Still, she wanted to mess with Samuel. No. Samuel quickly hid the mug of rum behind his back. Since the baby shower was just a week away, everyone in the Winston family enjoyed themselves. But it was surprising to see the stoic Samuel himself get drunk. What's that behind you? Sabrina asked, trying to hold the urge to laugh at Samuel. Young Mississippi. You must be tired. Samuel slowly talked. He found it difficult to stay still and find words. Samuel, where the hell are you? Suddenly, Sabrina heard Imelda shout from downstairs. Bring me another barrel. Sabrina couldn't believe what she had just heard. It was Imelda, there was no doubt in Sabrina's mind. Now everything made sense to Sabrina. The room behind Samuel was used to store booze for special occasions. It looked like Samuel came here to bring booze to Imelda. A light bulb lit up in Sabrina's mind. She slowly walked toward Samuel. Why don't you take a short nap, Grandpa Samuel? Sabrina whispered in a gentle tone as specks of golden light floated into Samuel's mind. Soon, the old man dropped to the ground and began snoring. After putting Samuel to sleep, Sabrina opened the door behind Samuel. The door opened with a creak, revealing countless wooden barrels. The Winstons only opened these barrels for special occasions. Each barrel was at least 100 years old and engraved with a special rune. The air in the room itself had a tinge of sweetness. Sabrina walked toward a barrel and placed her hand on the side as a rune glimmered on the barrel. In a blink of an eye, the barrel shrank to the size of a mug. Sabrina picked up the mug and left the room. She headed to Imelda's room with an amused smile. The manor was just as cheerful inside as it was on the outside. Every corner of the house was decorated with rare flowers, antiques, and light orbs. Moreover, everyone was in such a good mood. Luckily for Sabrina, no one noticed her as they were all in the main hall, and Imelda's room was far from it. After taking a few quick steps, Sabrina reached an emerald green door with Winston family portrait hanging above. Sabrina couldn't help smiling, looking at the portrait. She was 5 years old when they drew the portrait. Everyone looked so happy in the picture. To be honest, Sabrina missed those good old days. Nowadays, everyone in her family was going through a tough time. Letting out a heavy sigh, Sabrina opened the room. As soon as the door creaked open, Sabrina was welcomed with the strong scent of booze in the air. She saw Imelda rolling on the bed with a large mug of rum in her hand. Her hair was a mess, and so were her robes. A wide, stupid grin from ear to ear was plastered on her face. Diana. Imelda mistook Sabrina for Diana. One couldn't blame Imelda completely. The older Sabrina got, the more she resembled her mother. Since Imelda was drunk to the throat, she thought it was Diana who entered the room. The prankster in Sabrina told her to go along with Imelda and pretend to be her mother. I brought you something, Imelda, Sabrina sternly said. She surprisingly sounded exactly like Diana. Hence, Imelda had no clue that it was Sabrina who was in front of her. Sit down. Imelda pulled Sabrina down, forcing her to sit down on the bed beside her. Imelda threw her hand around Sabrina's neck and took a large gulp of rum. I am so happy, Diane. After a long time I truly feel free. Why is that? Asked Sabrina. She liked where it was going and decided to pretend to be Diana longer than she initially thought. What do you mean why? Our whole family is coming together. When was the last time this happened? Said Imelda. Sabrina was about to ask something else when Imelda shocked Sabrina. Accept him, thanks to the gods, I pray. Sabrina creased her brows as Imelda emptied the mug in her hand. I know I shouldn't say this, but he is a curse, Diana. Sabrina was utterly confused. The words that came from Imelda's mouth didn't make any sense to her. I even have to call you Diana because of him. Sabrina's instinct told her to refill Imelda's mug. With a flick of her wrist, she transformed the mug to its original size. Sabria drowned a mug into the barrel and handed it over to Imelda. You can call me whatever you want, Imelda, said Sabrina. At that moment, Sabrina didn't know she was about to be shaken to the core. Good. Imelda raised her mug before gulping the rum down her throat. Foam and rum flowed out her mouth and drenched her robes. Harriet Hunt, said Imelda. For a moment, Sabrina couldn't believe what she had just heard. Harriet Hunt was a legend among cultivators. As a student of Trident Academy, Sabrina studied Harriet Hunt and her adventures. It wouldn't be an overstatement to say Harriet Hunt was the most powerful and strongest cultivator of her time. It was really unfortunate that she and her sisters died in an accident. Even to this day, some people believed Harriet Hunt is still alive. Sabrina was one of them. Why did you call me that? Sabrina frowned. It's your name, silly. Imelda knocked Sabrina on the head. After hearing Imelda's words, Sabrina's mind went blank. Confused and bewildered, Sabrina stared at Imelda. Ever since Sabrina was little, she had this strange feeling that her mother was putting on a mask. After she grew up, it felt like Diana was pretending to be someone else. Although Sabrina had grown used to the feeling, Imelda's words brought up everything Sabrina buried deep within her. I am Harriet Hunt, and who are you? Irena Hunt. Once again, Imelda raised her mug proudly, having no idea what she had just done. Silence fell over the room. It took Sabrina a few minutes to collect her thoughts. At that moment, her thoughts were a mess. What she thought would be a good prank turned out to be a life-changing moment. Never in a million years had Sabrina thought her mother was Harriet Hunt. Sabrina stood from the bed and went to the doorway to close the door. Sabrina decided to unveil the secret behind her mother and why she faked her death. Don't you miss our old life? Asked Sabrina. Imelda shook her head. I have everything I want here, said Imelda. I am glad you feel that way, Imelda. I just wish I could say the same, Sabrina sighed. You have to let him go, Harry. He is a curse. The moment he came into existence, we lost all the happiness in our lives. Sabrina wondered who she was calling a curse. Judging by her words and the look in Imelda's eyes, Sabrina had this strange, eerie feeling. But Sabrina was afraid of asking her directly, which might reveal her identity to Imelda. Instead, Sabrina decided to take a subtle approach. She put herself in Diana's shoes and thought about what her mother would say at this moment. He is not a curse, Imelda. Aren't we happy right now? I am, but you aren't, said Imelda. You can fool others, Harry, but not me. I know you. My heart bleeds every time you go out there to keep him safe. Yet you forgot he is the threat to all, not the other way around. You don't mean these words, Imelda, said Sabrina. I do, Harry. It's you who has yet to see who he really is. You know what he did to the Barnes. As soon as Sabrina heard these words, she learned who she was talking about. Ghost, Sabrina mumbled under her breath. Don't even say his name, Harry. It's bad luck. Also, don't do anything stupid like trying to invite him, Harry. He brings nothing but death and destruction. Why would I do that? Asked Sabrina. Imelda dragged her words. Because you still think of him as your son. Remember this, Harry, you may have given birth to twins, but you only have one son, it's Noah. Sabrina's heart skipped a beat. Her entire body trembled from head to toe. Sweat beads appeared on her forehead as she shivered. Ghost is my brother. Sabrina's words spanned before her eyes, learning the biggest secret in her life. Chapter 801 Andor, God of time and space. Tears gushed out of Sabrina's eyes, knowing the truth. The Dark Lord was her brother. Everything fell into pieces in her mind. When she prayed for her brother to save her from the vampires, he arrived at her aid. Now she knew why she felt a strange connection with Ghost. The truth would change the Winston Manor forever. The images of Ghost's face flashed across Sabrina's eyes. She wanted to tell Rowena and Noah about the truth. If Noah and Ghost had learned the truth as she did, they might stop hurting each other. Sabrina now had the power to bring peace between the Guardians and the Dark Lord. But first, she wanted to know why her mother hid the truth about Ghost from everyone. Imelda, Sabrina called Imelda. It became so difficult to keep pretending as Diana when her mind was in a shamble. Sabrina turned her gaze back to Imelda. Suddenly, the door creaked. It slowly opened, revealing Samuel. The spell she cast on Samuel should keep him asleep for at least 6 hours. Yet Samuel somehow managed to wake up and reach the room. Moreover, Sabrina wondered what he was doing here. Grandp, Sabrina's words stuck in her throat when she noticed the strange glow in Samuel's eyes. The pair of eyes glimmered like diamonds. It wasn't the same man Sabrina had seen upstairs. He walked with a certain grace. At that moment, he radiated a kingly aura as he walked toward them. Samuel, Imelda raised her mud, wordlessly asking for a refill from the butler. However, Sabrina didn't think the man before them was their butler. He seemed different. But before Sabrina could question the man, an energy pulse shot out of Samuel's eyes and knocked out Sabrina and Imelda cold. The two ladies were lying flat on the bed. With a flick of his wrist, Samuel closed the door. Without wasting any time, Samuel moved their unconscious body to the floor and put them next to each other. He then squatted beside them. Silence fell over the room. The cheerful laughter and songs sung by the servants barely reached the closed room. The drunk always spills the beans, Samuel sighed. As Sabrina sensed, it wasn't Samuel in the room. On the contrary, Samuel was possessed by Andreas' liver of soul. The last time he took over Samuel's body, Andreas wiped off the memories of Ethan, Imelda, and Sabrina. This wasn't the first time Sabrina had learned the truth about Diana's real identity and her connection to Ghost. Previously, Ethan told Sabrina about Diana's real identity when she returned from the Shadow Realm. If it wasn't for him, Sabrina would have told her entire family about Ghost and his connection to the Winston family. Andreas couldn't let that happen because he cared about Noah and his family more than anything. Revealing the truth about Ghost being Noah's brother would bring nothing but destruction upon the Winston family. Only the death of the Dark Lord could ensure the Winston family's safety from the Sky Hall. But killing him was not an easy task. Only Noah could take the Dark Lord's life. A mere moment of hesitation to kill the Dark Lord would bring calamity upon the world. If the Dark Lord managed to kill Noah, there would be no one to stop him. At that time, the world would turn into the Dark Realm, which Lady Chinjo desperately wanted the Great Eight Clans and the Sky Hall to stop. All of her sacrifices and struggles would be meaningless if Noah failed to fulfill his destiny. The fate of the entire world was resting upon Noah's shoulders. Hence, the last thing Andreas wanted was Sabrina to change his mind about taking the Dark Lord's life. Andreas gently placed one hand on Sabrina's forehead while the other on Imelda's. His hands glowed, radiating a gentle white light from within. The light enabled Andreas to access both of their memories of the last hour. Every time Andreas used the spell, it cost him a bit of his soul. But it had to be done. Andreas didn't think the Dark Lord would spare the Winstons if he knew the truth. Knowing Noah, Andreas was sure Noah would drop his guard against the Dark Lord in case he learned that the Dark Lord was his twin brother. Expelliarmus, mumbled Andreas, wiping off Sabrina and Imelda's memories of the last hour. Gradually, the light in Samuel's hands dimmed out. Then he left the room as if nothing had happened, leaving Sabrina and Imelda behind. They would have zero memories of what had happened once they woke up. Knowing the secret of the Winston family was safe, Andreas could rest easy. Being stripped away of their memories, Sabrina and Imelda slept on the ground peacefully. Read chapter 587 to refresh your memories. Meanwhile, somewhere else in a pocket dimension, a lone castle stood gracefully under a starry sky. Trapped between inviting lush green hills and intimidating jet-black, snow-capped mountains lay the castle. The castle resided peacefully at the top of a hilltop, not making a sound. No one knew why it was there or who built it. But indeed, it was something quite unique. As the sparkling blue light beamed upon the golden walls of the castle, it revealed the splendor and majesty of the castle. The starry sky revealed the ceramic pavements, the golden statues, and the most beautifully engineered towers that touched the clouds. If one were to look at it from a neighboring hill station, the castle size itself could be convincing enough of that of a city, covering hundreds of hectares of verdant land. The view was simply breathtaking. Cyan blue lakes fainting the thousands of trees lined up against one another, tainting the land with various shades of blue, red, and whatnot. As much as the golden castle looked grandeur, it was also quite intimidating. Its hundreds of foot-high walls and glistening ruins and arrays were enough to scare the most daring of enemies away. Only one being was living inside the castle, a god. Not only in the castle but even in the entire dimension, he was the only living being. He had been in the castle for thousands of years. The inside of the castle was just as grandeur as the outside. Bulky braziers hung from each of the 12 obsidian columns. These columns lit up the lower levels of the throne hall and allowed shadows to play and dance where light could not reach. The illustrations of a golden-haired man on the rounded ceiling danced in the flickering light while sculptures resembling the man looked down upon the maple floor of this grand hall. A viridian rug ran in a circle around the hall, with 2 paths at the throne and the main entrance, while ribbon banners with adorned embroideries covered parts of the walls. Draperies edged massive, tinted glass windows colored the same viridian as the banners. The curtains had been adorned with gold leaves and embellished borders. In the middle of the throne hall, on an elevated platform, sat a radiant throne made of sapphire and gold overlooking the statues resembling the man sitting on the throne. The man had silver frizzy hair tied in a ponytail, revealing a fresh, gloomy face. Glittering hazel eyes sat narrowly within their sockets, watching wearily over the empty throne hall. Freckles were spread charmingly around his nose and cheekbones. A sword left a mark reaching from just under the right eyebrow, first running towards his small lips and ending above his right eye. This scar kept him awake for thousands of years. While the man was resting on the throne, a cloud of dark smoke rose from the ground before him. He stood up from the throne and climbed down the stairs to reach the ground. Andor. The cloud of smoke talked in a terrifying otherworldly voice. "How long do you have to wait for him?" The cloud of darkness asked Andor. "He has started to build his stupid castle. Compared to the last time, he is progressing much faster than I initially anticipated," said Andor. For some reason, his eyes glimmered with killing intent, and his voice oozed hatred. Just thinking about him made Andor's blood boil. "Do you feel the same hatred and anger toward him as you did 5,000 years ago, Andor?" The dark cloud asked Andor. "No," Andor shook his head. "What I felt 5,000 years ago was just a seed. It has grown into a giant tree of hatred in my heart. I want his blood more than I want a way out of this pathetic mortal realm. Patience is a virtue, Andor. As the god of space and time, you should know this more than anyone," said the dark cloud. "I have all the time in the world." "He made sure of that," Andor snarled. "That was his mistake. Now, you know everything he would do before he does." A devilish grin emerged on Andor's face. "He forgot who controls the time. Soon he would pay the price for it," Andor chuckled devilishly. Every fiber in his goldy body was filled with hatred toward his fellow god, the god of darkness. How could Michael have reset the time without meddling with the god of time and space? Their battle shook the universe itself and created tears in reality. The god of darkness proved to be the most powerful of the two. As a result, he successfully reset the time using Andor's blood. Because Andor was the god of time and space, he was able to escape the time array created by the god of darkness. By resetting the time, Michael closed the portal to the higher realm, the world of the gods. The portal could only be opened again by the one who closed it in the first place. But to do that, Andor had to wait for the god of darkness to get stronger. Certain things must happen to the god of darkness in his life. Otherwise, the timeline would change, and his way out of the mortal realm might become a dream. That was the main reason why the Sky Hall didn't send their entire army to destroy Michael in the first place. because the Sky Hall was controlled by none other than Andor himself. Chapter 802 The Realm of Gods. Eventually, the cloud of darkness faded out of existence, leaving Andor alone in the giant castle. It was time for Andor to see what his minions were up to. He just raised his hand as a golden beam of light shot out of his hands. Soon, 3 figures emerged from the light. They were in their astral forms rather than physical forms. The moment they came into existence, they fell to their knees. Heavenly Lord Andor, they greeted him with utmost respect and reverence. They didn't even raise their heads to look him in the eyes. These 3 were none other than the 3 elders who planned to enslave Noah, Devdan, Thorfinn, and the lady in white, Erail. Through these 3, Andor controlled the entire Sky Hall. They served him wholeheartedly in the hope of becoming gods one day. Once the Dark Lord could open the portal to higher realms, they planned to ascend with Andor. "What are you 3 idiots doing nowadays?" asked Andor. He didn't bother to hide his disgust toward the mortals. The mortals were pretty disgusting in his eyes. In his mind, the mortals were a disease to the world. If he cared about the world, even for a bit, he would have cleansed the world of the mortals. Unfortunately, not all the gods shared the same thought about the mortals. In the higher realm, some gods loved the mortals, some hated them, and the majority of them couldn't care less about the mortals. Thanks to the Dark Lord, no god could descend from the higher realm to the mortal realm, and Andor was stuck in the mortal realm for thousands of years. Guiding Noah Winston in his path to be stronger, Heavenly Lord, Devdan answered Andor despite how he was getting treated by Andor. "What's the God of Light up to?" asked Andor. As the god who wields power to kill his opposite, Andor rooted for Noah. Simply put, Noah was like a friend to Andor as the enemy of his enemy was his friend. "He is on his way to his home, Heavenly Lord," said the dwarf, Thorfinn. "What?" Andor's calm voice turned menacing. He creased his sword-like brows. "Shouldn't he be searching for the arrows?" asked Andor. Although killing a god was not an easy task, it was not impossible. There were some ancient texts in the higher realm which mentioned killing a god and its effects. But Andor had no idea how a mortal like Chinjo managed to get a piece of this ancient text and managed to forge these god-killing arrows. Even in the higher realm, Andor had never seen a god die for eons. Only some scripts mentioned some rogue gods and the war between the gods. As for the consequences of a god's death, nothing was mentioned in any texts. If only Andor was at his peak power, he would have found Chinjo with a snap of his fingers. After all, he was the god of time and space. Unfortunately, he was still recovering from the last battle with the Dark Lord. He was fortunate the Dark Queen was there to save him from the Dark Lord. "This Dark Queen is not Gaia." The trio stayed silent. Their bodies trembled, sensing the overwhelming power radiating from Andor. Although he was not at his peak power, he could still kill the trio before they could blink an eye. But he needed them more than he liked to admit. As the god of time and space, Andor knew better than anyone of the consequences of altering the events in the timeline. Any simple change could result in a catastrophic change in the future. Hence, Andor had to approach the situation with extreme caution. For a moment, Andor picked his brain in complete silence. Finally, Andor came up with an idea to nudge Noah in the right direction. It was not changing the events per se, but speeding things up a bit. Send an assassin to the Winston Manor. Take a shot at one of Noah's loved ones, but do not kill them. Just let your clone in the family take care of the assassin, said Andor. Let the Dark Lord take the fall. It should be enough to light the flame in Noah's heart. By injuring someone from Noah's family, Andor was not completely altering the timeline but nudging Noah in the right direction. In this situation, the right direction would let Noah battle the Dark Lord. Andor wanted the god of darkness to die, but to ascend to the higher realm, he just needed one god to die. It might even be Noah. But no matter what, their battle must happen. Andor was manipulating the Sky Hall and the Great Eight clans from behind the scene to ensure that. Otherwise, the Sky Hall could have easily taken down the moment Michael revealed himself as the Dark Lord. Although Andor felt he was in control, and he was, for the most part, he failed to take the past Dark Lord into the equation. His ego as a god blinded him from thinking whether the past Dark Lord planned this or not. Andor was still thinking that the past Dark Lord did not anticipate Andor would escape from the time array. As for the God of Darkness, make his life harder, but don't end it. I won't stay in this scum of a world a second longer than I have to, Andor snarled. It wouldn't take a second for Andor to leave his caste and kill the God of Darkness. The current Dark Lord's power was not even a fraction of his past self. Hence, killing him would be as easy as stepping on an ant to Andor. However, if he did that, the Dark Lord's soul would leave his body and wander the universe for an unknown time before finding another suitable vessel. It might take eons. Even the God of Time and Space did not have that much patience. The quickest way for Andor to leave this mortal realm was with the God of Darkness. Consider it done, Heavenly Lord. The trio bobbed their heads up and down. Now leave. Andor waved his hand as the astral figures of the trio vanished into thin air. As Andor returned to his throne, his mind played tricks with him. He heard the God of Darkness words in his mind. May the other gods have mercy on you because I want. These words sounded loud and clear in Andor's head. It was as though the Dark Lord himself was speaking to him from somewhere in the castle. Andor clenched his fist to the point golden blood trickled out of his palm. I am not my brother, Andor. He will show you mercy. I will show you death. When mortals are desperate and helpless, they will pray to a god. Tell me, Andor, what are you going to do? The more he heard the Dark Lord's words, the redder Andor's eyes turned. He wanted to leave the castle and rip him to pieces. I am the God of Darkness. I am vengeance. I am your death. Andor's heart skipped a beat when his mind played the last words the Dark Lord spoke to him. This wasn't new to Andor. On the contrary, he had been hearing the Dark Lord's words and seeing his images flash in front of his eyes for thousands of years. Still, every time it happened, it had the same effect on Andor. We will meet again, my dear God of Darkness, Andor growled as his eyes glistened. Meanwhile, back on the demon's grave, Michael slowly turned around. To his surprise, it was one of the men who went into the portal a few moments ago. The angel was holding a crossbow made of some kind of red stone. The crossbow bolt glistened, threatening to end the life of whoever it was pointed at. Easy there, Tiger, said Michael. Do you see this? The angel was not afraid of Michael, not even a bit. The way he talked showed his courage. This is specially designed to knock out an immortal, said the angel. Because of the helmet on his head, Michael couldn't see the angel's eyes. But if he had to guess, he would say they had no fear within them. Get on your knees with your hands in the air, said the angel, only to see Michael laugh. Vidora snuck back into Michael's robes. Trust me, that bolt wouldn't save you if I wanted to kill you, said Michael while moving the spider toward the angel. It was slowly crawling on his armor. The angel had no idea. Michael was just buying time until the spider could reach an exposed area in his armor and send its venom into the angel's bloodstream. Spider was just one way of dealing with the angel. If Michael wanted, he could kill him with his dead beams in a blink of an eye. The angel was not even strong as he was just at the fusion stage. You have 3 seconds, the angel warned Michael. But you only have 2 seconds, said Michael as the angel's eyes went wide. His muscles tensed. Soon, the angel collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Done, Michael smiled. He walked toward the angel and picked up the crossbow from the ground. I'll take a look at you later, said Michael. The crossbow vanished into thin air as Michael turned his gaze back to the angel on the ground. Let's get out of here first, said Cain. Lingering around in this place was not a safe option, Michael knew that. He waved his hand as the casket slid toward him. Michael growled, picking up the casket from the ground. He carried the casket on one shoulder and lifted the angel by his chest plate. Then, Michael dashed into the forest, using the lightning dash. Michael just hoped the other angels wouldn't track him down until he could get information from the angel. Flying away would have been much easier if it wasn't for the strange and powerful gravity. Eventually, Michael put several miles of distance between the digging site and him. From where he was standing, he saw nothing but ancient trees. The place was enveloped in complete darkness. After putting down the casket and the angel down, Michael stretched his arms. What are you hiding inside? Michael asked, looking at the casket on the ground. He didn't waste any more time. Instead, he grabbed the casket on its edge and pried it open with brute strength. What the fuck? Michael was stunned by the thing inside. Chapter 803, Return of an Old Enemy. When Michael opened the casket, he saw a demon skeleton lying on a black cloth. Suddenly, something lit up within the demon's empty eye sockets. It lunged at Michael at lightning speed. Thanks to his cat-like reflex, he raised his hand, bringing out the black shield to block the demon's fist. The demon's hand cracked upon hitting the black shield. Without giving any time for the demon to retaliate, Michael grabbed the demon by its neck and forced it down instead of attacking it. He then quickly shut the casket on the demon. The demon banged and growled from within. Several seconds passed as Michael noticed some runes started to radiate a pale blue light in the casket. Following the runes, the demon inside calmed down. It finally stopped banging against the casket and returned to its eternal slumber. So all those caskets have demons inside? Asked Iag from within Michael's robes. Michael did not answer. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the unconscious angel. A pale light shot out from Michael and scanned the angel on the ground. Just after the light faded away, Michael approached the angel. He picked him up by his neck and slammed him against a tree nearby. The force substituted the need for water to wake up the angel. Michael grabbed the angel's helmet and pulled it upwards, revealing the face of a golden-haired elf. The elf stared back at Michael with no emotions. One would expect the angel to be scared shitless, yet Michael saw no signs of fear in the angel's eyes. He doubted the angel was oblivious to the fact he was the Dark Lord. The entire world knew his face. Either the angel was really courageous, or he didn't know Michael's identity. There were other explanations. "You shouldn't be here," said the angel. "If I were you, I would worry about yourself," Iag said as they leaped on top of Michael's shoulder. A three-headed hydra. Finally, Vidora brought a sliver of a surprise to the elf's expressionless face. "Here's the deal. I'm going to ask you some questions. Satisfy me with your answers and I will let you live. Does that sound good to you?" asked Michael, only to see the elf snicker. "Humph. You are going to kill me either way. It's in your eyes. But I will answer your questions." Both Michael and Vidora were surprised by the angel's answer. "That makes my life much easier. Let's begin with who you are and whom you serve." "It doesn't matter who I am when I serve the Almighty," said the angel. His voice oozed pride and arrogance. "And who is that?" asked Michael. "Skyhall." Michael clenched his fist as a sudden urge to snap the angel's neck emerged in his heart. But he controlled himself. Michael used to think the Guardians were the big bad guy in his life until he met Aladir. Only then did he realize the real puppeteer was none other than the Skyhall, the most powerful clan in the entire world. Even before he was born, they slaughtered millions and eradicated the Order of Death with the help of Andreas. "Soon, my fellow angels will bring you the wrath of Holy Skyhall and smite you to oblivion," the angel threatened Michael. Vidora saw Michael bruising into laughter. "Angels, wrath, smiting me to oblivion. Geez, you guys really think you're from the God's land, don't you?" Michael's devilish laughter echoed through the forest. "Lucky for you, angel. You are staring right at a god in the flesh," said Sarba. "I know who you are the moment I laid my eyes on you," said the angel. Now Michael really felt bad about his reputation. He was the Dark Lord. Low-level soldiers like this angel should be afraid of him. Yet somehow, this angel showed no signs of fear. Of course, Michael could bring a whole new world of fear within the angel if he used the fear toxin. "The world has changed, Dark Lord. You are not the highest priority of Skyhall. How do I put this nicely? You are a cog in the machine, just a big one but not the biggest. I am offended." Michael shook his head disappointedly. "I thought you idiots were hunting him, the Dark Lord. Instead, you're grave robbing." "What?" asked Iag, turning the angel's gaze away from Michael. "An angel's duty is to get the order done, not to question it. In other words, you don't know." "That's a shame," Sarba sighed. "They are building an army. Why else do they need the undead and now the demons?" The question is, are they planning to wage war against us or someone else? Said Cain. When Michael looked at the elf, he didn't seem to know the answer. As he said, the angel was just a soldier. Michael doubted that even if he interrogated the entire angel unit, they would know something about the harvesting of demons and the undead. Who's giving you these orders? Asked Michael. It would be better if I showed you, the angel smiled. Soon, Vidora heard the trees rustle around them. The dried leaves and twigs broke under heavy footsteps. Michael let go of the angel as a strange light fought off the darkness around them. As Michael expected, 5 angels came out of the dark woods and stepped into the light. A hovering ball of light lit the place, revealing the glistening runes in their armor. They all spread their metal angel's wings and took out their golden spears to end Michael's life. Even the angel Michael interrogated quickly dashed away and joined his fellow angels. Poch. To Msaihel's shock, an angel stabbed the elf right through his chest with the golden spear. The elf coughed up blood as the angel lifted his body into the air. You are tainted by evil. Begone and find the pure light in the next life. The angel talked in a strange, otherworldly voice that was capable of tearing a man's eardrum. The high-pitched voice even hurt Sabra's ears. Soon, the elf's body turned into nothing but millions of specks of light. These golden lights shone in the air like fireflies. Gradually, they faded out of existence. Michael was stunned by this act of the angel. I thought the angels were merciful, said Michael. He slowly walked to the center of the light while the angels surrounded him. Despite their weak soul-refining stage cultivation, they dared to raise their spears against Michael. These angels certainly have a death wish. Even the system ridiculed the angels. Michael cracked his neck. The angels thought they caught him off guard. However, Michael knew the elf had a rune engraved on him, which emitted some kind of signal to the other angels. Simply put, Michael wanted these angels to find him. Not that Michael wanted to capture these angels and interrogate, but to kill them. In his eyes, they looked like sacks of experience points. But what surprised him was how courageous these angels were. Any other soul refiner would have trembled to the core in front of an immortal. Yet these angels were fearless. 5 angels. Michael slowly looked around. The angels were poised to attack him any second. Suddenly, the orb of light hovering above the angels exploded into bits. Darkness returned to the place. The Angie's eyes glimmered like diamonds in the darkness. They all dashed to the center where Michael was standing. Ding! The sound of metal clashing reverberated through the forest. Unlike the angels were expecting, they hit nothing. Arg! An angel growled. Michael grabbed an angel by his wings and ripped them off with his bare hand. His dark beams shot out of his eyes, ending the struggling angel's life altogether. He dropped the dead angel. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a soul-refining stage level 6 angel. The reward is 300,000 experience points and 6,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 7,000 badass points. Before even the other angels could hear the sound of his body hitting the ground, lightning flashed across the dark forest. In the light that lasted for a moment, the angels saw the bloodied metal wings on the ground. Then, another angel groaned. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a soul-refining stage level 5 angel. The reward is 300,000 experience points and 6,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 8,000 badass points. In a blink of an eye, Michael ended the life of 2 angels. They weren't even a challenge to Michael. When the remaining 3 tried to cast a spell, their golden spears radiated eyes blinding golden light. However, their casting was abruptly stopped by a wave of dark flames that shot out of Michael's body. The ring of dark flames reduced the angels to ashes. Even their rune-engraved armors were melted like candles. The almighty angels were turned to a hot pile of ashes. The system continuously rang in his mind, awarding him with experience and badass points. At that moment, a person with cat face and black fur was watching Michael from far away from Michael's environmental scanning range. This cat was the same person who was tasked to protect Tanulia Valrin and the brother of Jacobi who tracked down and almost killed Gaia. He was stalking the Dark Lord for years and finally came to the demon's grave to seek revenge for his brother's death. Dark Lord, the cat clenched his fist. His black fur made him blend with the night perfectly. It took everything he learned to find that his brother Jacobi was killed by Ghost and Gaia. Even to this moment, there was no solid evidence to prove his theory. But his gut instincts told it was Ghost, and that was all he needed. No matter what, he would either kill the Dark Lord or die trying. That was certain. From afar, he saw the Dark Lord teleport the casket to somewhere else. Afterward, the Dark Lord dashed into the forest, disappearing from his sight. It leaped to another branch and started to follow the Dark Lord. Chapter 804. City of the Dwarves. The country of Dalgarum is an enormous country with a population mainly consisting of dwarves. Bordered between wasteland to the north, a canal to the south, tall mountains to the east, and a huge sea to the west, the country of Dalgarum mainly lived off blacksmithing and woodcrafting. Dalgarum itself was mainly covered in large hills and had a hot climate, which had led to a freely spread population. Despite the number of dwarves, most of them lived in small villages. The country's landscape was quite frightening: withered flower fields, bleak, bare forests, and smelly, overgrown ponds were just a sliver of the harshness Dalgarum had to offer, which was why the country was unpopular among foreigners. The dwarves of Dalgarum were unwelcoming towards foreigners, especially toward the elves, and tended to welcome them with bitterness. They felt foreigners were a disease to the kingdom. At that moment, a young lady with golden hair left a black carriage and headed deeper into the forest. A long sword dangled on her back, complementing the silver armor she was wearing. "Don't take too much time," a thick, bitter voice resonated from the carriage. Yeah. The woman rolled her eyes as she walked into the forest without giving a damn about the carriage or the person inside. Annoying little twat. What did I do to deserve such an asshole for a client? The woman bickered with herself. The passive and daunting forest around her had the appeal of a forgotten land, which had been lost in time. The isolated forest remained in a capsule, untouched by the destructive essence of man. The dark shadows of the voluminous trees and puzzled bushes had become the structure of the forest. All the giant trees in the forest stood proud and tall as protectors of the exigent grounds, as the impregnated bushes that had consumed the hard regions of the forest concealed the land from beneath the dynamic portals of the open sky. The woman needed some time away from her client to clear her mind. She was afraid that if she spent any more time in the carriage with him, she might draw her sword and cut his head off. Standing before a large tree, she looked left and right. Then she punched the tree as hard as she could. The tree trembled, shedding its leaves. Her punch formed a hole in the tree. "That's quite an anger you're holding." The woman felt a chill running down her spine when she heard a devilish voice from behind. She turned around with her sword in her hand. To her surprise, a figure dressed in complete black stood before her. The power that radiated from her body made the woman tremble. "A half-immortal," the woman mumbled. Her grip around the sword loosened. Their cultivation gap was huge as she was at the soul-refining stage, and the black figure was at the half-immortal stage. If they fought, there was no chance for her to defeat the black figure. "I am not here to hurt you," said the black figure. "On the contrary, I am here to make a deal with you. A deal you might gladly accept." As a mercenary for hire, the woman liked the sound of the word deal. Controlling the overwhelming fear in her heart, the woman managed to speak. "What kind of deal?" "Simple," the black figure shrugged. "I will give you 300,000 gold coins for you to leave and never turn back." The woman's eyes glistened with joy, but soon, the glimmer faded out. She couldn't believe someone would pay 300,000 for no reason. But then the black figure tossed a space ring toward her. The woman instinctively caught the ring. "Check it out," said the black figure. When the woman sent a sliver of arch energy into the space ring, her eyes widened. She saw stacks of gold coins within the space ring. If she had to guess, she would say the stack contains 300,000 gold coins. "I am not very patient. So take the ring and leave, or I will take your life. The choice is yours," The woman's heart skipped a beat when she heard these words. "I will take the ring," the woman quickly said without taking any time. "Good." Close the deal with a handshake. The black figure slowly approached the woman. The latter did not back away in fear because if the half-immortal wanted her dead, she would be dead by now. Hence, she held her ground firmly. When the black figure arrived at arm-reaching distance from her, she reached out to shake her hand. The woman slowly shook her hand as she felt a sting in her hand. After shaking her hand, the black figure turned around and left. The woman was bewildered. However, she was able to heave a sigh of relief. With the space ring filled with 300,000 gold coins, the woman could settle down somewhere and live the rest of her life peacefully. There was no need for her to risk her life, protecting scums like her current client. The black figure then slowly removed the cloak and hood, revealing her face. It was none other than Gaia. She then flicked her wrist as a ceramic mask appeared in her hand. When she shook the woman's hand, she took a drop of blood from her hand. Gaia dropped the drop of blood onto the ceramic mask. Then she placed the mask on her face. Soon, the ceramic mask trembled as it merged with Gaia's face, turning her into a woman who resembled the mercenary Gaia met a second ago. Gaia planned to take the woman's place from the beginning, one way or another. Now that she had changed her face, she then proceeded to look the part. Thanks to Titus and Optimus, who were in charge of acquiring items for the Order, Gaia managed to get a replica of the woman's silver armor. With a flick of her wrist, she changed the black armor. Eventually, Gaia returned to the carriage she was following behind. Inside the carriage, there was someone who could get her in touch with someone from Han Torum. To pretend to be the mercenary, Gaia needed one last thing to change, her cultivation. Thanks to Michael, she had a special rune that could mimic the energy radiation of a soul refiner. It was a pale blue rune that glistened on her palm before fading away. After everything was said and done, Gaia returned to the carriage, where she met a couple of dwarves drinking and pissing. They seemed to have no shame or care. The dwarf she was about to meet was called Valmus. According to Gaia's sources, Valmus was a weapons dealer and was on his way to Dalgarum to get his hands on the new contraption the dwarves of Han Torum had built. The dwarves snickered and spat on the ground, showing their hatred toward a human. Gaia paid no mind to the dwarves as she opened the carriage door. Inside the carriage, a beefy dwarf with hardly any neck drinking to his throat. He used his long bushy brown beard to clean his hand. When he noticed the woman, a strange smile emerged on his face. As far as Gaia trailed the dwarf, she could tell the dwarf had no interest in women as he had in gold coins. Simply put, the dwarf loved gold coins more than anything. He was even fueling several wars so he could trade weapons with them and get rich. "There you are. Took your sweet little time, eh? I am not paying you to protect the tree's love," said the dwarf. Spit and ale splat out of his mouth as he talked. "If I am protecting something else and not you, you would have been dead by now." Gaia rolled her eyes. Since she was following the carriage and the woman for 5 days, she knew how the woman would have responded to the dwarf's comment. "Haha," the dwarf burst into laughter after hearing her answer. Then, he wiped off his mouth with a cloth and gestured at Gaia to climb inside the carriage. "Move your asses. It's time to resume our journey toward Embercrest." The dwarf raised his voice as Gaia sat beside the dwarf. The carriage slowly moved. Gaia took out the silver sword resembling the woman's and sharpened it in the carriage. Looking at the shiny blade, the dwarf kept his distance from Gaia. Their journey was uneventful as no one targeted the dwarf. Eventually, they arrived at the city of Embercrest. The city of Embercrest was built at the base of a mighty mountain and was truly a true modern curiosity. Its appearance was matched by the backdrop of majestic mountains, which have helped shape the city into what it is today. The riches these mountains and the mines in these mountains brought were of great importance. Still, they were also influential when it came to architectural designs, as the vast majority of buildings had been built alongside the mountains and often incorporated many different ores from the mines. The skyline was packed with unique buildings, and a lot of them seemed to have evolved throughout the ages. Daily life wasn't too stressful in Embercrest despite the lack of powerful cultivators. The dwarves substituted the cultivators with contraptions and engineering marvels. As Gaia looked through the window, She noticed the dwarves carrying rocks in a bag on their backs. These dwarves were heading for the city from one of the mines. Since the pavement was paved with stones, their ride was smooth and bumpless. Stone walls surrounded the entire city. In the distance, she saw some giant gears rotating under the waterfall. She read and heard that the dwarves produce lightning energy to power up the city instead of runes and orbs like the rest of the world. Something told her these gears, and the waterfall played a big part in the power generation. I love the smell of Embercrest. Home sweet home, the dwarf laughed. The further they traveled, the more dwarves Gaia saw on the street. Finally, they reached the city gates. To her surprise, she saw a carriage with the symbol of Guardian Guild engraved in went past them into the city. Chapter 805. Thieving Dwarves and a Weapons Dealer. Valmas, the weapon-dealing dwarf, had 5 bodyguards. 3 dwarves and 2 humans. All of them were at the soul refining stage. In dwarven nations, soul refining stage warriors were like gods. The strongest dwarven warrior in all dwarven kingdoms was at soul refining stage level 5, and he served under Drogon, the dwarf king. Furthermore, Valmas had a secret hideout that even his bodyguards had no idea of. He would use a teleportation scroll to get in and out. Hence, why he survived for so long despite being one of the most wanted dwarfs and a weapons dealer. The streets of Embercrest were bustling with dwarves, with the air smelling like freshly brewed ale and piss. Everywhere Gaia turned, she saw the dwarves in clusters, drinking and laughing like it's none of anyone's business. Contrary to the elves, the dwarves seemed simple and honest. The dwarves were hot-headed and honest folks compared to the elves, who were always scheming and using curses for hunting down their enemies. But that didn't mean all the elves were bad and all the dwarves were good. Both sides had bad apples, really bad apples. As Gaia was following behind Voms while keeping him close like a good bodyguard should, she noticed a couple of people following them. Even in the crowd, Gaia was skilled enough to spot her followers. Did I say how much I love the smell of the air? It feels like home. Now, who should I kill to get some freshly brewed Embercrest ale? Valmas joined the dwarves in laughing out loud. Hold your horses, Avamos. We've been followed. Gaia's words immediately stopped Valmas' laughter. She felt good ruining his jolly mood. The 3 dwarven bodyguards looked dumb while the other human man with rune-engraved bow and arrows looked vigilantly around him. Don't look back, Gaia warned the others. Are they stronger than you dimwits? Asked Valmas. It'd be better if we find your room soon, said Gaia. It's just around the corner. The place is called the Drunken Whore. Fucking hell. Gaia rolled her eyes as they turned around the corner to see a dazzling place totally opposite to its name. The place glistened with neon light and toe-tapping music. Although it was daytime, the dark rainy clouds gave enough darkness for the neon lights to really shimmer. Countless dwarves stood in neat lines to get inside with their dates. In between the 2 lines was a red carpet and a few people received the VIP treatment by entering the Drunken Whore without waiting. Simply put, this place was the fantasy version of nightclubs. Apparently, Valmas seemed to have the VIP card. He flicked his wrist as a golden plate appeared in his hand. But he stopped before getting closer to the place. Where are you coming, darling? Valams turned around and asked Gaia. Inside. She tilted her head. Nope. You are going to deal with those assholes who've been following us, or do you say? I want their heads. Valmas' eyes glistened with killing intent. What are you waiting for? I am paying you to do what I say, not to gawk like a dumb chicken. Gaia wanted to strangle the dwarf, but she managed to control her inner rage. The rest of you, follow me inside. Valmas gestured as the others followed him behind before throwing a you deserve it look at Gaia. Azazel, I am moving away from the dwarf. Monitor him, Gaia said to Azazel through the earpiece while walking away from Valmas. Got it, Dark Queen. Azazel acknowledged her order and focused on the spider on Valmas himself. After separating herself from Valmas, Gaia entered a dark alley between 2 tall buildings. She noticed several dwarves on the ground, too drunk to get up. With quick steps and leaps, Gaia reached the top of the building. As a human among dwarves, she stood out like a watchtower. Trailing her followers in her current state would only put a bigger target on her back. That was the reason she chose to get on top of the building. Regardless of the size of the dwarves, their buildings were surprisingly tall and unguarded. Thanks to the buildings being in a cluster, she leaped from one building to another. Eventually, she spotted the dwarves who had followed her earlier. The dwarves were gathered in a group and gawking at the drunken whore from a safe distance. Poor souls failed to notice Gaia straight on top of them, watching them like a hawk. How do we get inside? I, for one, cannot stay in the line. No shit. By the time we get inside, he would disappear like he always does. Gaia saw 5 dwarves conspiring against Valmus. Yet she didn't know the reason. To be honest, these dwarves seemed harmless to her. The one who looked like the leader had straps of white in his long bushy beard, and he was the strongest among them, a core formation level 3 warrior. Even if the entire group went against Valmus, they would stand a chance against a single bodyguard, let alone all of them. We cannot let him sell the blueprints. Once they get out, who knows how many people will die. The leader dwarf stuttered. Judging by their looks and words, Gaia thought these dwarves were innocent and almost formulated a lie to tell Valmus about their bodies. However, her thoughts were shattered by what they said next. Who cares? We aren't here to save people. We are here to get our money. I almost died snatching those plans. If anything, I should have gotten a bigger cut. Don't be ridiculous. I was the one who found the location of his workshop, said another dwarf. Stop following around, you morons. None of us got paid, not a single coin. That bastard has to pay us with coins and with blood if we played our cards right, said the leader of these little dwarven thieves. Let's get to our safe house and plan our next move. I have someone on the inside who could tell us where Valmus would be next, said another dwarf. Azazel, anything hot happening with Valmus? Asked Gaia as the dwarves began to dismantle their group. Nothing so far, my lady. He's just drinking and dancing with dwarven ladies. I don't think he would be able to do anything for a few hours judging by the amount of booze he drank, said Azazel. The demon was quite surprised by Valmus' ability to drink gallons of ale and stay awake. But I am trailing some dwarves who might have some interesting insights. Happy hunting, Dark Queen. I will keep you updated on Valmus' status, said Azazel as Gaia trailed the dwarves to their hideout. The tables had changed, as it was Gaia who followed the dwarves this time. While she was following them, Gaia noticed the dwarves looking behind to see if anyone was following them, a trait of a thief. She was certain that these dwarves were thieves, but the question was whether they were working for someone or alone. The city of Embercrest was built like a labyrinth. There were more alleys and turns than straight streets and more taverns than any other stores. Luckily, no one was on top of the buildings or watching the skies. Otherwise, they would have seen Gaia jumping from building to building, parkour style. After almost jumping from building to building for 15 minutes, Gaia reached the outskirts of Embercrest, where the infamous dwarves liked to live. This area before her had no tall buildings or lavish stores. Instead, all she could see were tiny huts in clusters and dirty river running across them. Gaia was standing atop the last tall building overlooking the outskirts. One more step, and she would be visible to all the dwarves on the ground. Even if she could sneak without getting detected, she doubted she would fit inside one of those huts. They were barely 4 feet tall. Thanks to Michael's inventions, she had a drone at her disposal. With a flick of her wrist, she took out a drone the size of her palm. It was transparent, as the wire and gears inside were visible to the naked eye. The back of Gaia's neck let out a dim light when the drone started to fly upward. This glimmer of light was a chip that allowed Gaia to control the drone without his or Azazel's help. On top of that, this tiny drone was specially made for her as his gift. It was fast, soundless when flying, and equipped with various types of gases to deal with enemies lethally and non-lethally. Fly, my beautiful night owl. Gaia controlled the drone to fly ahead. I need to work on my naming skills, said Gaia, watching the drone fly toward the dwarves. Suddenly, everything the drone saw popped up in the corner of her vision. This is how he feels, huh? Gaia thought about Michael controlling several drones at the same time. The drone swooped into the hut through a fist-sized hole. The dwarves were too busy searching for mugs and booze. A sane person wouldn't live in the hut for a minute. It looked shabby, dirty, and housed countless cockroaches. Yet, the dwarves didn't seem to mind their house guests. Instead, they filled their mugs and took them to the only piece of furniture that looked relatively new, a table. The dwarves sat around the table to discuss their future plans. They had no idea a drone was hovering above them, listening and watching them. Before they uttered a word, each took a large gulp of ale and didn't bother to wipe their mouths. "When will we receive intel from your source?" a dwarf asked. "He can't fly here, moron. He has a pet owl that would bring the intel to us." "We just have to wait," said the leader. "Let me guess. Your source is a human. A damned elf would use magic mumbo-jumbo. Any decent dwarf would use a crawler. But only a human would do something so stupid," the dwarves laughed. "Don't be too hard on my contact. Without him, we aren't getting near Valmus." It didn't take a genius to figure out the dwarf's inside contact. Because the only human Valmas had around him was her and another bodyguard. But Gaia could care less about him. The only thing she needed from the dwarves was what they sold to Valmus. Chapter 806. Death kissed Crossbow's eye. After waiting an entire hour for the dwarf's contact to arrive, Gaia lost her patience. Azazel had already warned her that Valmas was cleaning himself for some reason. "Time to deal with the dwarves," Gaia sighed as she stood up from the floor. With a single leap, she shot into the air and dived down like a breezing wind. No dwarves were able to see her until she broke through the roof. The dwarves were completely caught off guard. They squealed and jumped back like scared cats. "Which the fuck are you?" "You are trespass dash." The dwarves' words choked as they sensed her cultivation. Gaia waved her hand as a translucent dome appeared around them. The shield prevented any sounds from getting out. She didn't want the dwarves to scream for help. Although she could take down the entire kingdom single-handedly, it was neither her intention nor worth her time. "So which one of you assholes is going to tell me what you sold to Valmas?" Gaia scowled. The dwarves gawked at each other, slowly reaching for the short axes dangling on their waists. For talented builders, the dwarves were stupid when it came to battle. They would rather fight an unwinnable battle head-on without a strategy than keep calm and plan ahead. Gaia's experience was limited when it came to dwarves. The longest conversation she had with a dwarf was about how to build a defense tower in the floating mountain. Instead of warning the dwarves, Gaia waved her hand as a mighty wind blasted off the dwarves into the walls. The dwarves hit the wall with a thud and fell down, coughing and groaning in pain. Her figure quickly turned blurry. The dwarves saw her completely disappear from their sight. When she returned to where she was a moment ago, the dwarves felt something off. They instinctively reached for their axes but didn't find them. To their surprise, Gaia dropped their axes to the ground. Then she dragged a chair and sat backward, looking at the trembling dwarves. Their big round eyes glistened with anger and shock. But despite their cultivation difference, the dwarves didn't show any fear like anyone else would have. "The man I am working for wants all of you dead. But I am a merciful and reasonable person. Give me what you sold to Valmus, and we pretend like this never happened," Gaia talked calmly as the dwarves gawked at each other. They were startled, having no idea how the hell did she know about Valmas and the blueprint they sold to him. "Also, Valmas wants you all dead. He would pay me handsomely if I brought him your heads. Either way, I am getting paid. The question is, do you want to live or die?" Gaia's voice became menacing. Still, the dwarves kept their mouths shut. As a result, Gaia lost her patience. She raised her finger as a green laser-like beam shot out of her fingertips. The next thing the dwarves heard was their leader screaming as loud as he could. Blood spurted out of his left knee. The dwarf groaned and cursed to high heaven. "You are dead, human. When the news hits the city, our kind will hunt you down," the dwarves snarled at Gaia as she chuckled. "Do you really think your kind can stop me?" Gaia asked. Perhaps if the dwarves put a quest with the moguls, they might send some soul refiners after her. But the moguls were known for their expensive price and forbidden cultivation techniques. She doubted the kingdom cared enough about some lowly dwarves enough to approach the moguls in the shadows. "Unless you want me to target something you treasure, I suggest you give me what I want." The dwarf leader closed his legs as his heart skipped a beat. Seeing Gaia's fingertip glow, the dwarf leader shouted, Wait. I'll give you what you want," The dwarf leader quickly put his hand inside his robes and threw a yellowish parchment to Gaia. "You had a copy of the plans all this time, motherfucker." His dwarven buddies were not at all happy about the leader keeping a copy of the plan. If they knew this, they could have tried to sell the plan to someone else rather than wasting their time trailing Valmas. While the dwarves were bickering back and forth, Gaia opened the parchment to see a blueprint of some kind of crossbow. "I have to say, I am disappointed," Gaia sighed. When she heard the dwarves being so secretive, she thought they sold something powerful to Valmas. But instead, it was a blueprint of a crossbow. "I can't believe I wasted my time on this." She shook her head disappointedly before putting the blueprint into her space ring. Blueprints and new types of weapons were Michael's thing. Who knows, he might take a weird interest in the thing. After putting the blueprint into her space ring, she stood up from the chair and turned around. She debated with herself whether to kill the dwarves or leave them alive. Honestly, Gaia had no reason to kill them. She could always spin a lie to Valmas about what happened to the dwarves. After a bit of thinking, she decided to leave the dumb dwarves alone. "They'll be in the city for a while. So I don't want to see your faces ever again here. Get out." Gaia's voice turned demonic. Her words rang inside their heads until their vision turned blurry. But when she took a step forward to leave the hut, the dwarves made the biggest mistakes of their lives. One daring dwarf threw a pebble at Gaia. It hit her in the head, halting her steps. The dwarves only realized the graveness of their mistake when she turned around with her eyes glimmering with killing intent. At that moment, they knew they fucked it up. Gaia grabbed the chair she was sitting on and dragged it toward the dwarves. While the leader dwarf was screaming in pain, the others frantically looked for something that could be used to fight her. Their minds were blank as they didn't even think about using spells. Not that they had powerful spells in their arsenal. All their spells were more focused on picking locks, finding valuables, and running away. The drunken whore was just as lively inside as it was on the outside. With neon lights, smoke effects, and dancing dwarves, the place was lit with liveliness. Almost everyone inside was dancing to their heart. Valmas was exhausted after dancing and drinking for an hour without a break. He sat in one of the booths built for VIPs. Purple curtains covered the booth and prevented anyone from outside from taking a look inside. Valmas bodyguards flanked the booth from the sides. A while later, Gaia returned to the place. The dwarven bodyguards stopped her in front of the booth. "Where is he?" "Let her inside, moron." Before Gaia could answer the dwarf, Valmas shouted from inside. She entered the booth, pushing aside the dwarf. When she entered the booth, she saw Valmas combing his hair and dusting off his beard. "Well," Valmas looked at Gaia, wordlessly asking her about those who followed them. Gaia grabbed the pouch dangling on her waist and poured out its contents on the table before Valmas. The dwarf creased his brows. Some white things were covered in blood, and a handful of hair fell onto the table. "Is that tooth?" Valmas asked, pointing at a bloody white thing. It took him a few seconds to recognize them. He was no stranger to blood and gory, but even he felt a bit freaked out seeing Gaia pouring down teeth, hair, and pieces of flesh onto the table. Moreover, Valmas could see her bloody fist and blood drops on her face. "You asked me to bring their heads, but this is all I could find in their bodies after I was done with them." Gaia cracked her fists. After the dwarf hit her with the pebble, Gaia showed them hell on earth. She broke every bone in their bodies and almost killed them. When she was done with them, the dwarves wished for death. They became an outlet for her inner fury. Luckily for the dwarves, she didn't wish to kill them. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given them healing potions and thrown them out of the city herself. Since she was a pretty convincing liar, Valmas believed her without a doubt. Plus, he had more urgent things to worry about than some stupid dwarves. "You seem tense," said Gaia as Valmas sighed. "That obvious, huh? I have an important meeting coming up. This deal can change my life forever." The dwarf put down the wooden comb beside all the teeth and hairballs. He then took out a small piece of paper and handed it down to Gaia. "I need you to go down there and make sure it's not a trap." "Better to be safe than sorry," said Valmas. Gaia took a look at the piece of paper to see the name of an abandoned warehouse not very far from the drunken whore. This place was located in a relatively unpopulated area with plenty of escape routes if things went south. Whoever chose this place knew their stuff. "Will do." Gaia turned around and left the booth without saying anything about the mole and the bodyguards. There was a possibility that Valmas would call off the deal if he felt cold feet after hearing about the mole. Valmas' schedule must go uninterrupted for her to get closer to the new weapons built by Han Torum. He was their only lead to get those weapons. The human bodyguard looked tense as he should be. But Gaia didn't do or say anything that could tip him off. After leaving the drunken whore, Gaia headed straight to the meeting spot. Valmas wanted her to make sure it wasn't a trap, and she wanted to equip the place with enough spiders to record their secret deal. Since the streets were filled with dwarves, she could see to the end of the streets. To her surprise, she noticed the carriage with the Guardian Guild crest parked on an alley near a tavern. Coincidentally, the tavern was called the Mountain Guardian. She would have been more surprised if she knew who was staying inside, Noah Winston. Chapter 807. Death Kiss Crossbows. Black ominous clouds blanketed the naked sky, with rackety thunder rumbles in the distance. Deafening gusts of wind swept across the grassy plains. The dense, mossy foliage writhed in the murky darkness. The cold wind lashed the oak trees, making them wave left and right. Thunder roared more intensely, and one could feel the storm ready to pour at any moment. The place Valmas asked Gaia to check out was an abandoned warehouse used to store steel beams. After navigating through the labyrinth of streets, Gaia could see the building as well as the smashed windows, splintered wooden doors, and a sea of wilting moths all over the walls. The building towered like a dormant volcano amidst the wilderness, surrounded by an aura of misty malevolence. As she walked closer to the warehouse, she noticed more and more cracks in the wall. It was a miracle this place was still standing. Again, the buildings built by the dwarves were known for their resilience. Even natural disasters had a hard time destroying the dwarven buildings. The meeting was not till midnight. Hence, no one was around the place, which gave Gaia enough time to prepare and rig the place with spiders. The rusty, iron gate creaked loudly as she pushed it open. Rotten planks and rusted steel beams lay on the ground like withering corpses, shrouded by layers of soot and mud. Meanwhile, the sky split open as the heavy downpour throbbed against the thatched roof. The echoing sound of water dripping cut through the eerie silence. Gaia covered her head with a hood. The several holes in the roof let the rain droplets find their way into the building. A fallen wooden beam used for the ceiling hung from the roof, swaying in the wind like a pendulum. The wooden floor snapped and creaked every step of the way. Gaia noticed an open space in the middle of the warehouse, surrounded by various machines. All of them were rusted and on the verge of crumbling down. Dried leaves and spider webs decorated these once great machines. With a flick of her wrist, Gaia let out a bunch of spiders. They crawled into every corner of the building. She looked around the warehouse for a few minutes to see if anyone was hiding to ambush Valmas. Her senses and eyes found no one in the building. Only then did Gaia exit the building. The rain was picking up its ferocity. She barely saw the buildings in the distance through the heavy rain. Since she had to report back to Valmas, she flew straight back to the drunken whore. By the time she reached the place, Valmas' carriage was waiting for her. Gaia had a shield around her that prevented her from getting drenched in the rain. She climbed into the carriage. "There you are. Any hiccups?" asked Valmas. "No. The place is clean as far as I can tell. Just keep the teleportation scroll close to your chest in case things go south. I pay you to keep things from going south. What good are you if I have to use a precious teleportation scroll every time there is trouble?" Valmas growled. "You pay me to keep you alive. By the look of it, I am doing a good job. Besides, you can't bitch about trouble when you are one of the most wanted weapons dealers in the continent." Valmas couldn't argue with that logic. After some bickering, the carriage headed toward the abandoned warehouse. The clattering sound of rain hitting the carriage roof kept them company. Thanks to the paved roads, the ride was quite comfortable and less bumpy. Eventually, the party arrived at the warehouse, and this time, there was another carriage waiting in front of the building. "They are here," Valmas mumbled after stepping out of the carriage. Gaia saw no crest or words on the carriage that could be used to identify the party inside. Instead, the carriage was painted with pure red and no words. She walked beside Valmos along with the other bodyguards. As she got closer to the warehouse, she sensed more and more powerful beings inside. They were too powerful to be dwarves. Gaia quickly willed her mind to show the feed coming from the silent drone inside the warehouse. To her surprise, she saw a group of orcs waiting for them inside. Not in a million years, she expected the orcs to come to a weapons deal. Despite their grotesque, terrifying looks, the orcs were a peace-loving race. So Gaia wondered what made the orcs meet Valmos of all people. The door creaked open as the dwarves pushed the steel door. There were wooden crates stacked upon each other beside the orcs. These orcs looked different from those she had met in her life. The orcs tend to keep their bodies void of any inks or tattoos. On the contrary, the orcs in the warehouse filled their bodies with paints and weird designs. In addition, they had piercings on their noses, ears, and even their nipples. They also looked beefier and bulkier than typical orcs. If their looks weren't surprising enough, they were all at the peak of the soul-refining stage except the orc, who had painted his entire body red. Gaia noticed a strange fear on Valmos' face. Although she didn't know Valmos for long, she knew he wasn't the type to get scared quite easily. He couldn't afford to be soft-hearted in his line of business. "Took you long enough," the red orc growled. He literally puffed out smoke from his nostrils like a dragon. It was quite strange and terrifying. Gaia hoped these weird orcs wouldn't find out her true cultivation level. Not that she was afraid of them, but she didn't want the deal to go sideways until she learned more about the weapons built by Han Torum. "My dear friends, I hope you had a pleasant journey to Embercrest." Valmos laughed with open arms. "Stop with the pleasantries, dwarf. Show me the weapons." The orc did not beat around the bush. He cut short Valmos' pleasantries and growled. "Straight to business, eh? I like it." Valmos shrugged off the orc's comment and gestured at them to follow him. The orcs followed Valmos to the wooden crates. When Valmos touched the crate, several runes and chakras glimmered on their surface. For a dwarf who hated elves to the core, he was using elven runes to protect the wooden crates. It didn't surprise Gaia. To a criminal like Valmos, his products and coins were more important than their race's beef with the elves. The wooden crate on top click opened, revealing a bunch of handheld crossbows on top of the hay. These crossbows looked precisely the same as the crossbow Gaia saw on the blueprint. Now she was curious about these tiny crossbows. Judging by the look of them, she couldn't help wondering what they were capable of. "As promised, I present you the Death Kiss crossbows. You can change the name however you want after buying them," said Valmos. 10,000 apiece. I have a total of hundreds of them made for you. As I said in the letter, the blueprint is sold separately. It will cost you 10 million. Before that, I need to see if the weapon does what you claim it would," said the orc. Valmos creased his brows. "I didn't bring any poor saps," said Valmos as a strange devilish grin emerged on the red orc's face. "Let me take care of that," said the orc. He then clapped his hands as the steel door opened once again. They all turned their gazes at the door to see two orcs dragging a few sacks through the muddy ground. The sacks moved and groaned. Each sack contained something alive, squirming inside. For some reason, Gaia had a bad feeling. The orcs picked up the sacks one by one and tossed them a few meters away from Valmos and the orcs. One of the orcs who stood behind the red orc went to the sacks and untied the top. What jumped out of the sacks was none other than the dwarves Gaia almost beaten to death. These stupid dwarves managed to get caught by the orcs. She explicitly made it clear to go through the forest and escape the kingdom. Valmos frowned, looking at the 5 dwarves. "They claim they stole the blueprint that you used to build these crossbows." "Let's just say I believe them," said the orc. "What do you have to say for yourself, dwarf?" the red orc asked with his eyes glimmering with murderous glee. "They speak the truth. They stole the plans for me. I am a weapons dealer, not a weapons builder. They don't have the blueprint anymore." "I possess the blueprint now," Valum said, throwing his hands in the air. The thieving dwarves were shocked to see Gaia. Fortunately, their mouths were tied with cloth. "They are loose ends that need to be taken care of," the orc spoke in his thick, murderous voice. Then, the orc picked up a crossbow and placed it on Valmos' hands. "Take care of them," said the orc before looking over his shoulder at the other orcs for some reason. One of the orcs nodded and went to the dwarves, who were on their knees. The orc murmured something under his breath as a golden shield appeared before each dwarf. Gaia's curiosity was piqued. She didn't worry about the dwarves exposing her identity because if things went south, she could always kill them all. But fortunately, Valmas had no idea the dwarves who followed them and the dwarves before him were the same. Otherwise, he would have been pissed at her for lying to him. Whoa, Valmas threw a fit. I don't get my hands dirty. That's why I have these morons. Valmas' gaze swept across the bodyguards. Let one of my underlings pull the trigger, said Valmas. I don't see any problem with that, said the orc. The thieving dwarves groaned, but no words escaped their mouths. Here, Valmas handed over the crossbow to Gaia. Then he looked at the orc as he nodded. Only then did Valmas take out a steel ball the size of a grape and give it to Gaia. Put that in here. Valmas pointed at the hole on top of the crossbow. When she brought the steel ball close to the hole, an invisible force pulled the steel ball inside. Kill them all, said Valmas as the thieving dwarves groaned louder. The fear for their lives flashed across their eyes. Gaia raised the crossbow, aiming at the dwarves. The crossbow was surprisingly lighter in weight, and she really wanted to know what it could do. Come on, pull the trigger, Valmas urged Gaia. Chapter 808 Invitation to Han Torum Auction. Death Kiss crossbow was a masterfully crafted crossbow with a rare sample of willow. Its string was made from deluxe wolf sinew. The wolf sinew was a fairly rare material around these parts of the world. The crossbow's limbs had been decorated with ebony details and ended in long points ornamented with delicate decorations. The stock was wrapped in dark leather and decorated with sigil decorations. In the hands of a master archer such as Gaia herself, this crossbow was capable of firing arrows up to 200 meters while still retaining lethal power. The appearance of the crossbow suggested master craftsmanship. Whoever built the crossbow had to be at least a 4-star blacksmith. Gay held the crossbow firmly in her hand as her index finger brushed the trigger. With a single pull of the trigger, Gaia could find out why the orcs were so interested in this crossbow. But pulling the trigger meant death for those stupid yet poor dwarves. She herself was curious to see what the crossbow was capable of. The dwarves cried, but no words escaped their mouths. They knew they were staring death in the face. At that moment, they regretted coming out of the forest to steal from Valmas. Greed for gold coins blinded them. As a result, they were about to lose their lives. In her defense, Gaia did warn the dwarves of the danger and gave them a chance to escape. Still, the dwarves managed to get caught. That wasn't her fault. Even if she didn't want to kill the dwarves, sparing them would ruin her disguise and make enemies out of these strange orcs. Despite the orcs' spooky looks, Gaia didn't intend to make enemies out of them. Instead, she wanted to learn more to see if she could recruit them into their army. Furthermore, sparing the dwarves might ruin her chance to learn more about the weapons built by Han Torum, which she couldn't allow to happen. Therefore, the dwarves had to die. Finally, Gaia pulled the trigger as the steel ball shot out of the crossbow and exploded midway into countless pellets. The crossbow surprisingly didn't have any recoil. Gaia didn't even feel like she fired a powerful steel ball until she saw the leader dwarf's head explode into a red mist. The blood splattered on the other dwarves as the air reeked of blood. The leader dwarf's headless body hit the ground with a sickening thud. Blood oozed out of his messed-up neck. Headshot! Valmas shouted excitedly. Everyone was surprised, but what surprised Gaia was how the pellets completely ignored the energy shield. Did you see that? A headshot could kill a core formation warrior despite any defense shields, as I said, Valmas explained, grinning from ear to ear. But not everyone is as good as my sexy bodyguard here. Valmas threw a sly grin at Gaia. He wasn't moving, the red orc growled. He wasn't as impressed as Valmas. The red orc was not wrong. Anyone with a little bit of skill could hit a stationary target from a 5-meter distance. Even a blind man had the chance for a headshot in that short distance. Hey, race another ball. Valmas threw another steel ball and gestured at Gaia to reload the crossbow. The orc threw a dubious look at the dwarf as he tapped the wooden crate. One crate contains all the ammunition you asked for, After reloading the crossbow, Gaia pointed it at another dwarf and pulled the trigger. She had already killed one, so it wasn't a big deal for her to end the others. One by one, the dwarves lost their heads. Blood sprayed out from their neck as the orcs looked satisfied. Eventually, the golden shield before the dwarves faded away. The crossbow hooked up Gaia. She didn't use a bit of energy, yet she killed 4 body-strengthening stages and 1 core formation warrior despite the energy shield. Now she realized why the orcs were interested in the crossbows. Although Gaia didn't believe these crossbows could do anything to anyone above core strengthening stage warriors, these crossbows could change the tide of war since most wars were fought by soldiers who were mainly at body-strengthening stage. When 2 powerful cultivators fought, the Guardian Guild would interfere to broker peace or one of the Great 8 clans. On the contrary, when 2 kingdoms went into war and thousands of soldiers fought, the Guardian Guild ensured the battle was fought in a controlled environment. For instance, when the Duke of Flamefair waged war against Pen Town and Ice Fair, the Guardian Guild did nothing. Gaia had already decided to bring the blueprint to Michael and mass-produce these crossbows. Knowing Michael and his talent for building powerful stuff, Gaia was confident he would make changes to the crossbow and build something extraordinary from the blueprint. After she killed all the dwarves, the red orc threw a silver ring at Valmus. The dwarf licked his lips, looking into the space ring. Wonderful! The dwarf clapped his hands together. He then took out a parchment worn out by the time and handed it over to the orc. The red orc opened the parchment, took a look at it, and nodded at Valmus. Pleasure doing business with you. Now, what about the thing I asked? Valmus kneaded his hands as though he was waiting for something from the orcs. The orc put his hand into the belt around his waist and pulled out a golden card with some letters embossed on it. This will get you inside. Remember, this is the invitation, and whoever holds it gets the right to participate in the auction, said the orc. Gaia glanced over Valmas' shoulder at the golden card. Although the words embossed on the card were nearly unreadable, she was able to make out the words Han Torum. Connecting the dots, Gaia realized she was one step closer to getting the weapons built by Han Torum. The red orc signaled his underlings to carry the wooden crates and follow him to the carriage outside. While the orcs were clearing out the crates, Valmas stared at the golden card in his hand with his eyes sparkling. Eventually, the orcs left the warehouse with the crates, leaving Valmas and his bodyguards behind. Gaia waited until the orcs were completely out of the area. Then, she took a step forward, snatching the golden card from Valmas' hand. "Chai," the dwarf shouted. Gaia completely ignored him and read the words on the card. Place, the Lily Hall. Time, morning 8 on the 10th. Gaia read the words as the bodyguards tensed. "What do you think you are doing?" Valmas bellowed again. "Sorry, Valmas. You should wait for the next auction." Gaia shrugged as Valmas' eyes glistened with anger and disbelief. "Are you tired of living, bitch?" The 2 dwarven bodyguards behind Valmas growled. Instead of answering the dwarves, she just closed her eyes as her silver armor faded away and the black Dark Queen armor replaced it. When the transformation finished, the dwarves took a step back. Valmas was terrified. As a weapons dealer, he was aware of everything that had been happening throughout the world. So naturally, he knew everything about the Dark Lord and his better half, the Dark Queen. The dark armor and the red flaming eyes were dead giveaways. The human bodyguard, on the other hand, collapsed to the ground in utter fear. Even in many humans were scared shitless of the Dark Lord, especially those who migrated to from Azair. "The Dark Lord wants this," said Gaia in her demonic voice. She released her suppressed aura of a half-immortal. As soon as they felt the overwhelming power, they trembled before her. Valmas was speechless. He may not have been as afraid as the human bodyguard of his, but her half-immortal power left him no choice other than to hand over the invitation he had worked so hard for. He had to call in all the favors to meet the orcs and get the card to participate in the Han Torum auction. Every fiber in his dwarven body told him to unsheath his battle axe and chop her head off. However, he was not stupid enough to do so. "Can I come with you as your +1? Valmas tried to negotiate with the Dark Queen. He couldn't let go of the golden opportunity to participate in the auction. "You could," Gaia rubbed her chin as a smile merged on Valmas' face. But the next words that came out of her mouth froze his smile. "But you would be dead by then," said Gaia. She was nonchalant. Before they could react, a thick green smoke enveloped them. Immediately, the dwarves and the human bodyguard began to cough. Blood dribbled from every hole in their bodies. Their eyes widened as they turned jade. Soon, their bodies began to melt down like wax statues in heat. "One less weapons dealer for the world," Gaia snickered. No one would shed a single tear for Valmas. Instead, the world would be a better place without him. From this point onward, there wouldn't be anyone to sell weapons to both sides and kindle wars between kingdoms. After killing them, Gaia put the invitation into her space ring. "Azazel, it's done," said Gaia to Azazel through the earpiece. "The Han Torum is going to sell their weapons in an auction. I think Noah or one of his underlings will participate and bid for the weapons. You may want to return to the castle and pick a dress for the occasion, my lady," said Azazel. Usually, Gaia hated wasting precious gold coins on expensive dresses like the other noble women. But this auction was something special. If Noah or the Guardians were attending the auction, she needed to be there. For some reason, she doubted she could steal or destroy the weapons built by one of the great 8 clans. She must attend the auction and see who buys the weapons. Unfortunately, the Dark Lord's castle was short of gold coins. Therefore, Gaia planned to steal the weapons or destroy them from whoever buys them in the auction tomorrow. Meanwhile, inside the demon's grave, Michael was sitting before a campfire with Vidora by his side. The demon's grave darkened as he heard countless creepy noises in the distance. After roaming around the place for 2 days, he had grown used to the sounds. "Get some sleep. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a long day," said Michael. Chapter 809 Armored Salamandipede. After resting at the fire for a few hours with Vidora, Michael resumed his journey through the demon's grave. Instead of buying the map of the demon's grave, Michael wandered aimlessly. Eventually, he came across a meadow once that looked as if it was stripped out from the pages of a storybook. The grass was Eden green and thigh-high to a thrush. There was a volcanic mountain in the distance that had peaks that looked as cruel as a hag's teeth. The mountain looked off in some mysterious way. Yet again, everything in the demon's grave looked eerie, especially when a thin veil of mist was covering them. Compared to the swamps and the dark forest Michael came through, the meadows were a paradise. Except for the white mist covering the meadows, everything else looked peaceful. It wasn't just the sights that pleased the senses, but also the air had a tinge of sweetness to it. The pitch-black sky above the meadow added an extra charm to the place, and the only light source Michael had was the fuming volcanic mountain in the distance. The lava oozing out of the mountain dimly lit the meadows with its hue of orange. Michael walked through the meadows, gently brushing the grass and flowers with his hands. It was a feast for the eyes. The meadow stretched as far as the eye could see, with no monsters in the near vicinity. Vidora flew out from his shoulder and chased what seemed to be fireflies in a dance of life and death. Almost 15 minutes later, Michael noticed a neon blue ribbon of river running through the meadow. The song of the river was very gentle as it went plinking and tinkling over the gravel bed. Michael halted his steps for a moment and bent down to wash his face with the clear river water. He immediately felt refreshed by the cold water. As he was washing his face, a cold breeze brushed past him. The grass waving with the wind, coupled with the river, sounded like music to Michael's ears. Since Sarba had enhanced senses, he could smell the sweetness of cherry blossoms and the soft caramel scent of flowers in the air. It was so soothing that he wanted to lie down against a mossy rock and drift into a deep sleep. The humidity rendered into dewdrops on the grass. For a few minutes, the sky drizzled. But the clouds soon passed, leaving the grass and earth to steam gently like druid smoke. Michael thoroughly washed his face, head, and the back of his neck. He even dipped into the river and came back to wash off the mud from his robes. The swamp really did a number on his outfit. Fortunately, the river was shallow enough for him to cross to the other side. His target was the volcanic mountain in the distance. The volcanic mountain held 3 items he needed to forge the dark swords. After getting those items, he planned to venture deeper into the demon's grave to change their financial status. But he doubted either of these tasks would be easy. He had the feeling the peace and quiet he was enjoying might come to an end soon. As he expected, he sensed a half-immortal being nearby. The being was on his way to the mountain. "Did you sense it?" Sarba asked Michael as Vidora flew back to Michael. Michael nodded. Instead of heading straight toward the being, Michael flicked his wrist as several drones materialized above him. All the drones flew in the monster's direction as Michael concentrated on their feeds. To Michael's surprise, he did not see any monster through the drone feeds. The meadows looked peaceful and quiet. "I am not seeing any monster," Michael said to Vidora. "It can't be. I sensed a powerful being." "Something is there, ghost," said Sarba. He was absolutely certain that he sensed a monster near them. If he had to bet, he would say it was waiting for them 20 meters ahead of them. The howling wind breezed past Michael. He was not in a rush but strolled toward the monster. If he could fly, he might have flown around the monster instead of fighting. However, he decided to fight the monster because he wanted to challenge himself. Plus, slaying a half-immortal monster would give him millions of experience points. After Gaia killed the dwarves, Valmans, and his bodyguards, Michael needed only 400,000 experience points to reach the next level. The closer he got to the monster, the shakier the ground felt. Michael halted his steps and looked at the meadows before him. At first look, the meadows looked no different than the rest. But when Michael looked closer, he noticed an unevenness on the ground, as though something was hiding beneath the meadows. Michael raised his hand as a pebble flew straight into his hand. He then threw the pebble at the ground, where he suspected the monster resting. The pebble hit the ground with a thud, yet nothing happened. Michael threw another pebble, hoping to rile up the monster. He had a feeling the monster was waiting to ambush him. Poor bastard didn't have any idea that Michael had already sensed it. When Michael threw the third pebble, he heard a muffled roar. Brown dust storm emerged from the ground as Michael heard something heavily exhaling. Soon, the ground beneath him trembled. Michael took a step back. The monster hiding beneath slowly emerged from the ground, revealing his full body. It was a long reptilian monster that looked like a hybrid of a salamander and a centipede. The monster crawled out of the hole with its hundreds of tiny golden legs, sticking his long tongue out. Silver scales covered his body from top to bottom. The gigantic monster was at least 50 feet in length. It hissed at Michael, staring at him with its tiny blue eyes. Suddenly, the monster dived down, digging into the ground. Michael immediately activated his X-ray eyes to locate the creature in the ground. The monster dug its way out of the place where Michael was a second ago before jumping away. The area suddenly grew darker as Michael cast the death range. Moreover, the cloud of darkness shrouded Michael's body, completing his Dark Lord form. The dark beams shot out of his eyes. To his surprise, the dark beams bounced off the shiny scales covering the monster. The dark beams didn't even put a dent in the monster's body. Someone else would have been shocked and felt discouraged, but Michael felt excited. As a blacksmith, he could do wonders with scales as strong as these. Since gravity restricted him from flying, Michael couldn't use aerial attacks. Hence, he cast the lightning dash to move around the monster. The monster's scales let out a dim jade light as it fired a blob of boiling hot poison toward Michael. He was lucky enough to dash away, but when the poison hit the ground, everything around it for a 1-meter radius turned into nothing but ash. The ground sizzled like hot oil. Meanwhile, the monster kept firing blobs of poison repeatedly. Despite its gigantic size, the monster was extremely agile and quick. If the poison was not enough to burn the meadows, Michael cast the ring of fire and fired waves of dark flames at the monster. The dark flames burnt everything to ashes on their way. Although the dark beams bounced off the monster's scales, the dark flames managed to burn the monster. It roared in pain. But it didn't suffer much damage as Michael wanted it to. Ignitia, Michael cast the spell as black lightning bolts shot out of his fingertips. The air was electrified with his lightning bolts. Vidora heard the crackling lightning bolts and the creature's roar and flew away from Michael and the monster. When a half-immortal and an immortal were fighting, it was not a good idea to be in their way. Sabers saw the energy around them going haywire. As a result, dark clouds appeared out of nowhere above them, threatening them with a heavy downpour. Thunder claps echoed through the demon's grave. The monster kept disappearing into the ground and jumping out to catch Michael off guard. Michael fought the monster with lightning bolts and dark flames. Suddenly, the monster sprayed poisonous liquid from its mouth. The poison immediately enveloped them, hindering Michael's sight. Fortunately, the Dark Lord armor had a mask he bought from the system and fitted with a filtering system he built inside. The mask filtered the poison ion in the air and gave him fresh air. Michael thought he had overcome the poisonous air with his mask, but he didn't expect the monster to light the poisonous cloud with sparks. When the monster opened its mouth, sparks flew out. The poisonous air exploded in the blink of an eye. The explosion sent Michael flying. Although the responsive shield and the cloud of darkness saved him, he wasn't completely unharmed by the explosion. His whole body was cut and bruised, as well as had a couple of broken ribs. The explosion would have reduced a fusion stage cultivator if they were caught in one. It was powerful enough to hurt a god. Michael slowly picked himself up as the APD pumped a healing potion into his body. His poor armor was half burned and had countless holes and cuts. Michael wiped off the blood dribbling down his mouth. The monster hissed, crawling toward Michael without waiting for him to retaliate. "Why isn't he moving?" I asked, looking at Michael standing still. The monster moved closer and closer to Michael. It opened its mouth wide to bite and swallow his body as a whole. The ground near Michael trembled as the monster moved closer to him. Still, he didn't even budge from where he was standing. The monster was just an arm-reaching distance from him. It raised its body, opening its mouth wide. Ayag almost closed her eyes when she saw the monster reach Michael. But to her shock, she heard a loud bang before the monster went flying away. The monster crashed down on the ground. Vidora was stunned. They all turned their gazes back to Michael to see the Doombringer emanating coldness in his hand. Only Kane saw the Doombringer appear in Michael's hand, and him swinging it with enough force to send the giant monster flying. Several scales on the monster's body tumbled down, leaving the monster's soft skin exposed. Chapter 8:10 Almighty Doombringer. After getting the Ancient Ice Core from the Aqua Auction and Blacksmith trait, Michael infused the Ancient Ice Core with the Doombringer. As a result, the Doombringer could summon frost and freeze its target upon hitting. Michael didn't let the monster stand up and attack him again. Instead, he threw the Doombringer, aiming for the monster's head. The Warhammer soared through the air, leaving a cold trail in the air. The coldness emanating from the Doombringer caused the temperature to drop by several degrees. It hit the monster in the head as the scales covering its head cracked but didn't break down. Michael dashed at the monster using the lightning dash. The black lightning bolts crackled around his body. Even from afar, Sarba could sense the electricity in the air. On his way to the monster, Michael raised his hand in the air as the Doombringer flew straight back into his hand. Fighting against gravity with his sheer brute strength, Michael leaped into the air. Vidora was stunned to see how high Michael could jump in the air. Gravity pulled him down, increasing the force of his descent. Upon nearing the monster, Michael clenched the Doombringer's handle as bone-chilling ice covered the Doombringer from top to bottom. Michael brought down the Warhammer on the monster's head while it was preparing to fire a poison blob at Michael. The collision produced a thunderous boom. Several scales on the monster's head cracked. They weren't frail by any means, but Michael was strong enough to crack them with his brute force. The monsters in the demon's grave defied all the typical rules of the world outside. Usually, a half-immortal would be no match for an immortal. However, inside the demon's grave, the monsters had traits and attribute to match the cultivation power of a higher being. For instance, the salamandipede was covered with silver scales that protected it from even the most powerful spells and attacks. If anyone else at the immortal stage fought the salamandipede, they would have been devoured by now. Its poison blobs were powerful enough to melt down an immortal to jelly. In other words, the monsters inside the demon's grave didn't need immortal-killing weapons to kill half-immortals or immortals. Hence, why even the most powerful cultivators didn't dare to visit the demon's grave. Still, Michael fought the monster head-to-head without going all out. After receiving a blunt force trauma to its head, the monster roared. Emerald green poison splattered out its mouth. Although the monster lacked facial features, it looked very pissed off. The monster swung its long tail and hit Michael in midair. Fortunately, Michael clenched his fist at the right time to bring out his black shield. The sheer force of the monster's brute force sent Michael flying. While he was in the air, the monster fired blobs of poison at Michael. These blobs took the shape of arrows and soared through the air to hit Michael. Once again, Michael raised his shield and shrouded himself with a cloud of darkness to protect himself from the poisonous arrows. The arrows splashed across the ground after hitting the black shield. Unfortunately, a drop of poison hit Michael's boots, making a sizzling noise. Michael immediately swung his legs, throwing away the boots before the poison could touch his skin. "You owe me a pair of boots, mister," said Michael after landing on his bare feet on the ground. Michael stared at the monster with the Doombringer and black shield in each hand. He cracked his neck. On the other side, the monster hissed before digging down into the ground. Despite its colossal size, the monster was quick to dig down and hide. Thanks to Michael's X-ray vision, he could see the tunnels down the ground and the monster. The monster was holding to catch Michael off guard, but he was waiting for the right movement to hit the monster with the Doombringer. He raised the Doombringer in the air as cold energy swirled around the battlehammer. Even from afar, Vidora felt the bone-chilling coldness of the Doombringer. This was the first time Vidora had seen Michael use the Doombringer to its full potential. Typically, Michael would finish the battle without using any weapons. But the monster forced him to take out the Doombringer, which showed how powerful the monster was. The ground beneath Michael kept trembling. He waited for the monster as it crawled toward him underground. Michael took a few steps back as the monster raised its head out of the ground. The moment its head came out of the ground, Michael hit its head with the Doombringer once again. This time, he covered the Doombringer's head with a block of ice to add extra damage to the monster. The monster dashed out of the ground and squirmed in pain. Michael immediately followed up his attack with the Ring of Fire. The monster's head was already covered in a layer of frost, and when the dark flames hit the ice, the scales shattered. Finally, Michael figured out the monster's weakness. The sturdy scales were vulnerable to ice plus fire attacks. They could withstand one element but not both. Since the scales were shattered, the monster's head was exposed. But when he was about to fire dark beams, the monster spewed poison from its mouth. It formed a cloud of green mist around the monster. To avoid an explosion like earlier, Michael immediately dashed away from the monster. To Michael's surprise, a strange glow appeared in the monster's head. Soon, the scales grew back, covering its exposed head. Michael creased his brows. Having a regeneration ability brought the battle to the next level. It was time for Michael to change his tactics. The cloud of poisonous mist gave Michael an idea. He dashed away and fired a bolt of lightning at the monster. As Michael planned, the lightning bolt lit the highly flammable poison cloud. The sound of the explosion echoed through the air, but the creature's roar overshadowed the explosion. Both Michael and the monster were blasted into opposite directions. Even a 30-meter distance between them didn't prevent Michael from getting blasted away. Luckily, he just suffered some trauma that healed up in a few seconds, thanks to the APD. The same could not be said for the monster. Dark smoke enveloped the area around the monster. Michael had to use his thermal vision to locate the monster. As far as he could see, the monster was squirming as green slimy blood oozed out of several places in its body. Furthermore, it lost several of its legs to the explosion. Instead of dashing at the monster headstrong, Michael clenched the Doombringer around its pommel and its neck right beneath the head. His grip tightened as he pointed the head toward the monster. The runes engraved in the head glimmered with icy blue color. Soon, a stream of frost energy shot out of the Doombringer toward the monster. Everything around Michael froze by the frost energy shooting out of the battlehammer. Crystal ice rocks formed around the monster, slowly freezing it from head to toe. The monster squirmed as the crystals forming around it crumbled down. Yet, Michael did not stop freezing the monster. He poured more energy into the Doombringer, creating colder frost energy. The frost energy was cold enough to create a rain of snowflakes around Michael. The monster hissed as the frost covered its body with a thick layer of ice. If Gaze could kill one, Michael would have died by now. Squirming and hissing did not help the monster. Therefore, it fired poison blobs out of its mouth. Michael slowly moved toward the monster while keeping the frost beam focused on the monster. Coldness ran down Michael's spine. Even he wasn't spared by the coldness as a thin layer of ice formed on his skin. Nonetheless, Michael chose not to conjure the dark flames. Gradually, the frost energy formed a thick shell around the monster, preventing it from digging into the ground or moving its body freely. By the time Michael reached 5 meters distance from the monster, the ice had covered every inch of the monster's body except its eyes. Without wasting a second, Michael cast the Ring of Fire. A powerful wave of dark flames shot out of Michael's body. At that moment, extreme coldness met its opposite. The ice crystal layer on the monster's body shattered along with its silver scales. Green slimy blood splattered across the ground as Michael raised his shield to protect himself from the poisonous blood. With no scales, the monster's pinkish body was exposed to the world. Fear and shock emerged in the monster's tiny eyes. It hissed with fear. When Vidora thought the monster's life was over, the monster pulled its trump card up its sleeves. The monster slowly opened its mouth as Michael felt a powerful force sucking him into its mouth. Michael was left with no time to react. In a blink of an eye, he was in the monster's mouth. However, the monster couldn't close its mouth. Michael held its mouth wide open with the Doombringer on its palate. "We have to help him," said Iag as Vidora flew toward Michael and the monster. The monster frantically shook its head, trying to close its mouth and devour Michael. The light of life was slowly leaving away the monster's eyes. If one had to guess, one would say the monster had pulled a trick to kill both Michael and itself. Every bit of muscle in Michael's body tensed as veins bulged up on his face. As soon as Vidora reached the monster, they were surprised to see Michael smiling. No one in their right mind would smile stuck in a monster's mouth, but he did. Vidora was speechless. Judging by the smile on his face, they could tell he did not need their help. The monster, on the other hand, completely ignored Vidora and frantically shook its head left and right, hoping Michael would let go of the Doombringer in his hand. Occasionally missing content, please report errors in time. Chapter 8:11 Mount Hades standing inside the monster's mouth, Michael held its mouth open with the Doombringer and his other hand. Slowly, Michael moved the hand that was holding the Doombringer down. The monster almost snapped its mouth close, but Michael was strong enough to keep it open with one hand. He then raised the Doombringer as a bone-chilling frost beam shot straight down the monster's throat. Vidora heard the monster roar in agonizing pain. The monster went crazy. It swings its entire body left and right to throw out Michael. No matter how hard the monster tried to lose Michael and shoot him with a poison blob, it simply couldn't. Unlike the monster's outer body, its inside was soft tissue and flesh. The frost from the Doombringer crystallized the monster from within. If Michael wanted, he could send a stream of dark flames into the monster's throat and burn it from the inside. However, Michael had other plans for the monster. Instead of killing the monster, he froze the monster to the point it stopped struggling. He turned around before hitting the monster's palate with the Doombringer. The pointy end of the Doombringer hooked into the skin. Michael moved the Doombringer slightly forward as the monster crawled forward like a remotely controlled toy. Vidora was utterly speechless. They thought Michael would kill the monster when he had the chance. Instead, he was driving the monster toward the volcanic mountain in the distance. No one would have dared to make such a daring move. But making such uncanny moves was what made Michael the Dark Lord. The monster was already half dead. Its poison glands and organs were frozen. Vidora followed behind the monster while keeping a safe distance from it. Only while following the monster did they notice several others, like the monster Michael was riding from its mouth. Some of the salamandipeds were bigger and stronger than the monster before them. Even if Michael had killed one, he would have faced several on his way to the mountain. As much as Michael liked to hunt these monsters down and earn experience points, he valued his life and everything he had achieved till now more. Until the system reached level 10, where he could construct a body for himself in case he was killed, he had to keep himself safe. The meadows were littered with hundreds of salamandipeds. Coupled with weird gravity that prevented one from flying, even a group of immortals would be slain in the area. The more time they spent in the demon's grave, the more Vidora learned the dangers lurking in the realm. This was why even the seasoned immortals dared not to venture into the demon's grave despite the rare and priceless treasures within. A few weeks ago, Noah prepared himself to venture into the demon's grave, hoping the place would temper him and enhance his battle prowess. However, Andreas outright stopped him without giving Noah a choice. Andreas didn't think Noah was ready for the dangers in the demon's grave. To be honest, Andreas was right. Noah would have lost his life in a few hours if he had chosen to enter the realm. God or no god, one must be at least at the immortal stage to survive the demon's grave. The past Dark Lord made sure of that. Although the demon's grave was one of the past Dark Lord's regrets, only Michael could survive and close the realm. For some reason, the monsters in the demon's grave didn't attack Vidora. Some of the monsters dug into the ground the moment they saw Vidora. Looking at this weird behavior of the monsters, dark lines appeared on Ayag's forehead. She turned her gaze toward Cain since he was the smartest among the three of them. "Hey Cain, did you see how they went inside the ground when they saw us? It's weird, right?" said I. After hearing Ayag's remarks, Sarba shared his thoughts with Cain. "I also have this strange feeling that we and this place have some kind of connection. They weren't wrong to have these feelings. But the truth was far more than they could even dream of. Almost 4,000 years ago, before the Dark Lord reset the universe, a brutal world-ending war happened between two otherworldly races. The war had two sides. One side had thousands of demons, and the other side had only one fighter, the three-headed Hydra, Vidora. If so, we will get some answers before we leave this place," said Cain. He didn't let Sarba and Ayag know what he felt about this place. Unlike him, they were influenced by emotions rather than their brain. Until Ghost figured out what had really happened in this realm, Cain didn't want to come to any conclusions. Eventually, Michael reached the volcanic mountain base. Dark smoke and ash littered the ground as well as the air. The smell of fire nauseated them. As soon as they reached the mountain base, the high temperature caused the ice layer on the monster to crack. After the ice shattered, Michael was afraid of the monster healing back to its full strength. Therefore, Michael cast the ring of fire and ignitia at the same time. Black lightning bolts crackled around Michael's hand before hitting the monster's throat. Following the black lightning bolt, a stream of dark flames rushed into the monster's mouth, burning its flesh to well done. The monster roared and squirmed as Vidora's senses were overwhelmed by the burning flesh. Soon, the monster lost its strength to squirm and collapsed down. Its body shrunk as green slimy blood oozed out of its skin. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a half-immortal level 7 monster. The reward is 1 million experience points and 10,000 badass points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully being a badass. The reward is 15,000 badass points. Michael heard the system in his mind. Not even a second passed as Michael felt warmth throughout his body. This was a familiar feeling. He had leveled up. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Level 5. Vidora flew around the monster's lifeless body as Michael stepped out of its mouth. Without even looking around the mountain, Michael squatted down the monster's body and ran his fingers through its scales. After the explosion and fire plus ice attack, the monster lost most of its scales. He fired the dark beams out of his eyes, cutting out the few scales on its body. Vidora saw Michael peeling out the scales with a sickening screeching sound. He seemed unbothered by the blood and gore. On the contrary, he was whistling a strange tune and enjoying collecting the scales. It took him almost an hour to collect all the scales. At that moment, he sat before a pile of scales. Cain counted 34 scales in total. Each of them was diamond-shaped in the size of a grown man's palm. They wondered what Michael could do with so few scales. But after seeing the sorry state of his current armor, their first guess was new armor. After stripping the scales from the monster's body, Michael raised his hand, firing streams of dark flames from his hands. Without the scales, the monster's body couldn't withstand the dark flames. It slowly burned down to a hot pile of ashes and bones. Michael slightly bowed, paying his respect to the monster. When Michael turned around, he saw Vidora staring at him with bewildered looks on their faces. "You have something in mind?" Michael asked, tilting his head. "We are wondering what kind of connection we have with this place," said Ayag. Her words reminded Michael of the green glow in Cain's mouth that resembled the realm tear earlier. Just like Cain, Michael didn't want to say anything before he learned more about the demon's grave. Since the mysterious woman said the demon's grave was one of his mistakes, he had a feeling it might be related to Vidora somehow. But for the time being, Michael decided to stay silent on the matter. "I'd say let's explore the place more before making any assumptions," said Michael. Ayag heaved a heavy sigh and nodded. Finally, Michael turned his focus to the giant mountain before him. It looked bigger and mightier in close. Once again, Michael tried to ascend into the air but ultimately failed due to gravity. The required items needed to forge the dark swords are inside the mountain. "It seems like the host has to climb the mountain. I hope you are good at it," the system said. Weirdly, the system sounded amused by his conundrum. The volcanic mountain was none like Michael had ever seen in his life. Its ashen cone would grow hot and, with a great surging and throbbing, pour forth rivers of molten rock from chasms in its sides. Some flowed blazing down great channels. Some winded their way into the stony plain until they cooled and lay like twisted dragon shapes vomited from the tormented earth. The heat emanated from the molten lava was enough to burn a core formation warrior to dust. Vidora lifted their heavy heads as the mountain filled all their sight, looming vast before them. The growling mountain sounded like a hungry beast waiting to devour everything with its molten lava. Its cone-shaped top reached for the sky, shrouded in a huge mass of ash and sparks of fire. Just looking at the mountain hurt Michael's neck. He sighed, thinking of climbing the mountain through the oozing lava and uneven terrain. He was a hitman, not a mountain climber. Although he had training climbing walls and mountains, this fuming chimney of a mountain was not an ordinary one that anyone could climb. At least he had Mark III grappling hook to help him climb. After taking a long, deep breath, Michael walked toward the mountain. He grabbed the edges and started to climb up. "Are you sure about this?" Cain asked Michael. "Don't look down. It might help," said Sarba with a worried face. "Relax. I got this," said Michael. While Michael was climbing up, a sense of déjà vu hit him. He felt like he had climbed the mountain before. But he ignored all the doubts and focused on the task at hand. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.